School District Board of Directors meeting. Tonight is March 28th, 2018, and the time is 6:30. We are in the Wyndham Town Chambers. And Mr. Prince, may I have a roll call?
Sure can. Kate Brooks.
Here.
Eric Colby. Here. Jenny Cummins.
Here.
Don Dillon. Diana Forsley.
Here.
Marge Cavoni.
Here.
Pete Hensler. Here. Anna Kenny.
Here.
Scott McLean. Here. Genevieve Delano.
If you'll please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I actually do have an adjustment to the agenda this evening. At the end of the meeting, I just wanted to take just a couple of minutes for us to have a quick budget discussion about possibly adding another meeting if we feel more time to deliberate, so we'll just check in on that. All right. And also now we'd like to open it up for any public input. There's no public present, so we'll move right along. The first item that I would like to have us do is Don Davis has a little bit of a budget update since we had some changes from our previous meeting. So he's going to fill us in on that, and you should have the sheet in your...
Great, thank you very much. So, yes, after the meeting last week, we created what is called version 5 changes, and in that, it did bring the budget down, but I'll speak to what the changes were. There were some salary adjustments, as I recall, actually in my area, and there were some worker comp expenses for cash in lieu that were reduced. The board had talked about the reduction to strategic planning supplies, a reduction in the amount of money that's spent for school committee stipends, and we moved the health insurance from 15% to 12%. That was the biggest change at well, no, it isn't. It's the second largest, $148,000. And then the PAS vocational assessment was reduced in anticipation of the change in the manner in which the state will fund for career technical education schools. So that total reduction was $567,258, which brought the version 5 budget to $46,500,000 at an increase from last year of 3.61.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, so this evening we are continuing with our cost center presentations. This is our final evening of presentations. And first on our agenda is Mr. Rich Meserve, who is head of school for our Katahdin program.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting me be here today. I'd like to talk about our wonderful program, which serves 24 students. And we're really around because you folks are supporting us. You realize that every student counts in our district, and we all as staff firmly believe the very same thing. We thank you guys for your past support and continued support. We're really proud of what we're doing, the kids that we're serving, and I think we're really making some serious progress in helping these guys move on to what's going to be next, and hopefully that's a long and productive, happy life. How do we do that? Well, we know that the kids that come to our program, they have strengths, they have greatness in them. A lot of it hasn't been recognized. They've struggled in traditional schooling. The high school has often proved to be kind of a daunting place for most of them, and so they've come to us, and we work on them by building relationships and getting them out into the world, experiencing lots of different things. We integrate our therapeutic adventure, our restorative justice, and that community piece is huge, and I'll get into that a little bit later. Taking healthy risks, we're really all about that. How we do that and broadening these opportunity options for the kids, many varied ways that we do that. I just want to touch upon a couple things because especially recently we've had such huge success with some of our kids getting out into the wider world and broadening their horizons, and then bringing those experiences back into the classroom and see that translation between what they've done in the real world and their academic world. It's been pretty magical. So every week we're out, we're volunteering at Roots Reusables, Gorham House, Habitat for Humanity, multiple food pantries, multiple animal shelters, phenomenal work by the kids. We are out there doing our multi-night camping trips, kayaking trips, sailing trips. What have I done recently that's been pretty neat? We've partnered with Portland Community Squash, and I've had, I think, about 15 students I've now introduced to the sport of squash, none of whom had ever heard of squash. Actually, I digress. 2 students had mentioned they'd seen squash on a prison movie. I don't know what that was, and I'm stunned there was squash in a prison movie. Anyway, 15 kids who had never heard about squash basically are now playing squash, learning the sport. We go there, take advantage of what they offer. We do a lot of our academic programming when we do there on the day that we utilize their space. It's been really neat. We hope to get into working in their big kitchen. I'm working on a grant to redo their kitchen so that we can do some cooking for the after-school program through the community schools that they do there. And I think that'll be a real neat partnership with a lot of new opportunities for growth as our students get to know those students, which are a little different students than most of the students they're used to interacting with. So that should be neat. As I move through my list here, I think I want to come back to environment for learning, if you don't mind. We'll touch upon that in a minute. Numbers. Most of this, as the decision or there's discussion progresses here with us, I'm going to probably defer to my friend in the red tie behind me. I can say that in terms of what you saw on the sheet, when I put this whole thing together, I think I was on a plane flying back from our sailing trip, and I was trying to text it to Stacy Webster on my phone, and that seems like a lifetime ago. But when I did that, the only changes were from last year to this, we added our secretary, our admin assistant went from a half-time to a full-time position, just in order to meet the needs of our programming. She was only there for part of the time. Her desk was empty. We were trying to fill it, and all the roles that she had, we really needed to bring her up to a full-time position. So she's with us full-time now. And then in terms of any decreases, the lease got moved over to Mr. Hansen's budget. So that's all I have for immediate numbers things. I'm sure some things might come up as we continue the conversation, maybe after Bill. But getting back to the environment for learning piece. So as the arrival of proficiency-based standards came into the picture with our freshman class this year, we started to think about different ways to explore opportunities to help our students meet those standards. And while we've certainly enjoyed and appreciated our time at Camp Hines, it became pretty apparent that in order to most effectively meet the needs of our kids, we were going to have to do a little bit more in terms of providing opportunities for them versus what we had exclusively at Camp Hines. And when I say that, I mean things like coming closer to home here at the main campus and utilizing some of the things that we can do at the high school and pretty much the high school, but other places as well, perhaps. But the gym, the science facilities, the science equipment, the music facilities, the arts facilities, these types of things. We've certainly done a great job, I think, on providing opportunities like that for the students, but it's getting progressively harder to do that based on where we are with the people that we have and the facilities that we have. So we're sort of using this as a positive thing and as an opportunity for really positive change for our students. And like I say, I don't want this to reflect poorly on our time at Camp Hines. We've really gotten tremendously positive things out of that place. But I think if you look at what we can do if we move closer to home here at the high school, I think the opportunities for our students are almost limitless. And the opportunity for growth in our program, which I think could be helpful for the district, and just collaboration between our staff and high school staff and some of the things that we do now, and maybe opening that up to a bigger group of students would be likely. Anything else for me right now? Mr. Colby?
So I guess my understanding of the program before and now was kids that didn't do well in that environment. What's changed?
So what I would like to see us do as we potentially transition closer to the high school, if not physically in the high school, is still have a self-contained program, at least initially, so that we can slowly start to acclimate into the broader environment there. Now that'll be very slow, especially with some of our students who are more accustomed to what we have in our very isolated world at Camp Hines. I think a big part of where that mindset was, if you will, stemmed from real school days. And students who really had an aversion, I mean a pretty extreme aversion to any mainstream setting. And we've gotten away from that a bit. We're looking at students who are much more comfortable interacting with larger groups of people, with others, with their peers. And I and many others who have been a part of this discussion feel that I think the time is right to start to move back into, more of a communal atmosphere as opposed to just being isolated away from everyone else.
One last,
Of course.
just humor me,
Keep
'cause
going. It's fine.
I'm not as up to obviously your end of things as you are.
Sure.
So you're saying the kids have changed. That group of kids back then needed that, but this group of kids doesn't?
Well, the student population, when it was the real school once upon a time, yeah, I mean, you were talking about the students who had really struggled the most, and many who had not made it in pretty extreme alternative programs ended up at the real school. So, yeah, that was a very different breed of cat. That's a different population from what we have now.
All right, but just to piggyback on Eric, because I was sharing the same thought, because when the program was moving from Mackworth to Camp Hines, I had asked the question, well, why not just move onto the campus? And I was told that the separation was a needed part of the experience. And so, I mean, you're not alone in your thinking. So is it more economics, or is it really that there is a benefit to being on campus?
There's an economic benefit, of course, but that's not what's driving it for me at all. That's other people. I believe this. Now that I've been more of the person who's been able to make some decisions and sort of guide where things are going, I really feel comfortable thinking that at this point, we're getting closer to where this is much more realistic for almost all of our students. And so it's going to have to be a slow move. I mean, as we move into the space, I'm hoping that we move into a space that's really just ours at first. And the students still feel that it's that community only, and the ones that need that. And so we'll have that, because we do still have some students that are like that, no doubt. But I think those students can grow and push themselves a little bit more. And if we get into an environment where it's easier to do that, then we can help them get there.
Keep going.
Yep.
You said there's currently 24 students?
Correct.
And we're anticipating that dropping down to 18, at least on the show.
Correct.
Why is that? And,
We're graduating 6 students.
okay, I was trying to follow the numbers on this.
So when that was done, we didn't have 18 students. I think we had 20, and we've added 4 students since then. So we currently have 24 students. But we will graduate 6 students this year.
Okay, so you graduate 6, and you have no more coming into the program that you're anticipating?
Oh, we will. There's
So it won't be 18.
There's a considerable waiting list at the high school.
All right, is there a comfort level, like a
We're at
target
that comfort level right now, based on who we have. But once we get into the space and get acclimated with the space, that number will get bigger.
Okay, because the way the sheet reads is that
It's
in 18-19 we're going to have 18 students. In the program. All right, so
we will be at where we are right now, plus. And the hope is much, much larger in the future. Much larger, yeah.
I kind of think of when I think of your program, I think of Lisa's program as a whole, and it's very fluid. I think it's always been very, very fluid, and I think, and you can agree with me or not, that you're going to have students that you're going to be able to acclimate back to some pieces of things, and there will always be the students, but I think we're hoping to maintain that safe place for those students who cannot go 100% out there. And correct me if I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. You're very
I think
right.
that's my thinking, is
Absolutely.
just to be able to have that. And I think it's great because I know for a fact you did not get to use the kitchen out there, so lunch is being brought in from, thank you, Randy, from Jordan Small, so they would have access to that. The library, you don't have the same facility as the library at the high school, so I can definitely see the benefit to the students, even if there are just certain things that they use that they don't have access to now.
Correct.
I think we're all okay with that. But the question is, it sounds like you don't have a facility. Am I wrong? You've got a facility now, but it sounds like you're looking for something close to the school. No.
Yes, we have a space in mind.
Bill will speak to it.
Okay. Yes. Good. Then I'll pass on that.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Awkward. Anything
I
else?
guess you didn't read Scott's either.
Any other questions? I mean, we can always call you back too.
Yeah.
No, just one is, are there other neighboring districts that have this same sort of a program?
Where we are now or where we might be going? Yeah, actually, yes, both. So I have done quite a bit of work, not quite a bit of work, but a number of visits and consultations with the Noble High School program, where it's a similar program, and they have a great, very highly successful program in terms of, golly, I can't remember the numbers, and I don't want to speak incorrectly, but much higher than ours, with a waiting list of triple that, trying to get into their program. So it's in their high school. It's more of a assimilated program, but still very different, on their own part of the building, separate space, separate teachers, community within a community. And there are some others too. South Portland has one. Yep, South Portland offers one. That's a little more traditionally mainstreamed, but still separate. And there's other programs, but I think this will be a kind of combination of a bunch of different programs, and what we're doing now.
You had mentioned that you have a waiting list. Like what do those numbers look like?
380. No.
Okay. We're in trouble.
Probably it varies from day to day. It depends, literally almost on the hour. Yeah, I'd say less than 10. Probably strong numbers, 3 to 8.
So in the
Any day.
meantime, they're in the traditional setting, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have, I'm getting into programming, and I apologize, but
That's
just
okay.
quickly, how do you determine who gets in?
So there's a gatekeeping process at the high school. So everyone's involved, from Chris to guidance counselors to social workers to the assistant principals to teachers. And it's both a special ed and regular ed policy, and everyone kind of gets funneled to the ultimate person who gets in touch with me, and that's Doug Daigle, a social worker. Mm-hmm. And so there's lots of discussion behind the scenes before that name ever gets to me. Once that name gets to me, I talk to all the players involved at the high school end, and then if it's seems to be the right fit for somebody to come in for an interview, we invite them to come in with their family, tour the facility, really explain our program, what our expectations are, and what they're going to bring to the program as well. Make sure that they have the right mindset and drive to come. That we want students to come to the program. We don't want people who are avoiding school. So.
Is this the kind of program that once you're in, you're in?
It normally is. It's not it's fluid in the sense that you don't have to be, but
I understand.
Most people come in and they don't leave. Yeah, they like it there.
Okay.
Which we like. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you still going to try to maintain a lot of the adventure-based?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes, we are. Yeah, and that will. What's that?
Do you want to speak to that in terms of proximity and both
Well, transportation-wise, it's going to help tremendously in terms of most of our focus, not all, our woodsy stuff is west, but almost everything else is east or south. And so just being here will be a huge help in terms of, less time in the van for the kids getting to and from school for most, pardon the random kids, but the ones who are neighbors are not going to love this. But, for most, that'll help. That'll help a lot. And then us getting to a lot of the stuff that we get to will be greatly improved. But we certainly do. We firmly believe it's a very critical part of our programming. So we will. It'll have to change a little bit, I think, down the road, year or two, but we'll still always do it.
Do you still do door-to-door pickup?
Yes, we do. Okay. Yeah. Which helps with the attendance.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep. Thank you. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next guest is Mr. Bill Hansen, who is the Director of Facilities.
Oh, good evening. It's great to be here. Would you like me to talk a little bit about the financial impact of the movement from Camp Hines down to high school first and then get into the facilities budget? Would that be?
I think so. That would be a better flow.
So what we're talking about to accomplish this would be installing a portable building behind the high school. If you're familiar with where the maintenance shed is behind the building and the loading dock, there's a large patch of grass and a sidewalk between there and the staff parking lot, which is also behind the high school. So the plan would be to install a large portable building behind the high school in that grassy area, such that would be where adult ed would move to. That would be, the buildings would be positioned such that it's at grade as you walk in, so it's ADA accessible. And at the same time, we're going to remove the stairs that go down to the staff parking lot and create a walkway that goes onto that canopy walkway to go right into the school. So that's going to be their access into the school after hours. So that space is going to be pretty equivalent within a couple hundred square feet to what they have now. And then the Katahdin would move into the existing adult ed space. They'd have that entrance to use for their student drop-off. So the vans would come by, could drop off, they'd walk right into their own separate entrance to the school. And they have a contained space within the high school with access to the high school, the door to the corridor. So that is the plan. So cost-wise, if we look at fiscal year version 4, I don't have version 5, so I have to go by that. I don't know what's changed as far as it goes on my end, probably not much. Camp Hines was looking at a total cost of about $109,000. If we looked at the program staying there, we look at the lease and all the other costs associated with that. And if we move to the high school, we're looking at a cost for the Katahdin program of around $66,000. But then you have to incur the cost of the adult ed portable, which is $93,000, for a total of $159,000. So it's about $50,000 increase from staying at Camp Hines to going to the high school. $50,000 of that is a one-time cost for the site work to set the building, to get the power to it, to do the work that you need to do to the site so that the building can be placed. So on year 2, that you're going to be more at par cost where you were staying at Camp Hines.
Are you purchasing or leasing the portable?
That will that is based on a lease, and again, it's preliminary right now. But anything like that would come back to the board for approval, and after we'll bring various options and a recommendation. It's early at this point in time, but it's based off a lease cost right now. So I guess the really short story, condensed story is it's nearly a cost neutral, and I haven't taken into account at all the impact on transportation, which I think would be a positive cost to us, and the ability to access the programs with less time. So I'm very comfortable saying it's cost neutral after year one. Year one, we're going to have to invest into the site to set the portable and make it operational. Do you have any questions on that? Okay. Well, it's great to be here. It's hard to believe it's been 9 years. 2009 was when I started. I don't know what that happened. I guess it took me 9 years to get Don to be scared to work with me anymore to leave. I'm not sure. So I've got about 300 pages to go through. Right? Now I'll try to keep it brief. I am going to go over a little bit of backstory for those of you who may not be familiar. You've heard from me before. You can, kind of maybe tune out for a little bit as I'm going over this. But really, our mission statement on facilities is really to operate our properties in such a way that the educational staff can focus purely on the educational deliverables. And we do that by running buildings that are efficient, through preventive maintenance, to clean the buildings effectively. So really, we want to make it so that our occupants don't really know they have a building. They really need to focus on the educational stuff. And it's really great to work with some of the teachers. It's really fun to see what they're doing. So that's kind of our mission statement. If you look at your facilities, if those of you are familiar with it, we're about 600,000 square foot of building that we maintain and use every day. And it seems like the use keeps growing and growing after hours and stuff, so it gets used pretty heavily every day. If you look at a cost of those building properties in total, you're somewhere between $170 to $200 million in replacement. If all of a sudden they were gone today, you had to build them new. That's kind of what you're looking at. For those of you who may not know, your largest building is the high school at 210,000 square feet. Your second largest building is the primary school at 93,000 square feet, so it's about half the size. Followed by the middle school in Wyndham at 80,000. Then you've got 3 buildings in the 50,000 square foot size, RES, Jordan Small, and Manchester. You get just under 15,000 for Field Down. So that's kind of how it all shakes down. And there's various other small buildings that all kind of add up. So when we look at maintenance budget, really there's really 4 components. There's the regular O&M portion of the budget, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Then I refer to maintenance improvement project, MIP projects. So those are things that are not ongoing regular maintenance. An example I'll give you, cleaning the boiler is an O&M expense. It happens every year. We do it next year, we'll do it again. But replacing a pump that's 10 years old is not a every year type of thing. So that tends to be more of an MIP, particularly if it's over a certain amount of money. So generally for MIP projects, they're funded from the operating budget within the current fiscal year, and they occur in one fiscal year generally, but it can be phased over too, depending on how you do it. The second type of project funding that we have outside the operating budget is capital improvement. CIP projects, and again, those are larger values generally, and they don't have to be, but there's a lease purchase associated with it. There's a lease to buy it. So the trucks that we bought for the facilities department for plowing, that's a lease purchase, that's a CIP. So when I come to the board with a CIP, it's generally going to be so much for so many years. So you're committing the school system to a payment for a few years when we do that. So that's kind of a different type of spending. The last one is capital reserve projects, which I've been very fortunate that the board has supported this type of funding for work for a couple of reasons. One, it's not tied to a fiscal year. By funding projects in a capital reserve, money is put into an account to support the project, and it can be carried over multiple fiscal years. The one part of it is this 2 things. It generally is funded from year-end fund balance, requires approval usually ahead of time of the finance committee, facilities committee, then the whole board, and then the town actually gets to vote on as a warrant article as a up-down raise your hand. So it isn't like the operating budget where it's tied in as whole. It's a separate article. That's really kind of how we fund our projects. So again, if we look at $180 to $200 million of assets, if you think of it lasting 50 years, and you're going to replace it on a straight line depreciation at 50 years, you'd have to spend $4 million a year to maintain that and not start accruing deferred maintenance. And that's one of the things that I've been very pleased with my years I've been here, is that the board's really supported us keeping the buildings up to shape and taking care of things so that we're not getting behind. And you don't have to go too far in the paper to see a lot of schools that's not the case. And, probably our biggest challenge is our middle school, which, thanks to the tweet that Pete sent to us today, we kind of know when the listing will come out. I was hoping it was going to be in April or May, and now it's June, but, we know when that's coming, but that's kind of where we're at. So $4 million would be the money I'd love to have every year for CIP and MIP. And, however, the target that I've shot for, which Don's been supporting, was around 600,000. So there's a gap there, right? Pretty good sized gap. But I really think that with some work, we can get close to it. 600,000 is the MIP CIP portion. And then generally there's been CRP money on top of that. So we get closer to maybe half of that money that we're looking at. And I think it's been good. So if we look at this year's budget, I'm up 4.17%. Or around 232,000 overall in the facilities budget. About 120,000 of that is salary and benefits, so roughly about half. If I look at CIP, I'm flat. In 2017, I was 212,000. 2018, I was 198. 2019, I'm 200,000. So I'd say pretty flat. And kind of my goal when I look at MIP CIP is about if you look at 6, 1/3 CIP, 2/3 of MIP, because if I get too much lease payments, I'm stuck. Because if all your money is stuck in lease, you have no available money next year to make that work. So I try to keep about 1/3 of it in there. MIP in 2017 was 451,000. So that year we actually made the $600,000 goal. The head for the two, we were 664. In 2018, it was 263 reduced from 323. So I was at 461 total for the two. And this year I'm proposing 490, so it's 290 for the MIP and the 200 for the CIP for 490. So we're a little bit less than the 600 I'd like to be at, but I think it's sustainable based on where we're at right now on the budget.
I'm sorry. You said you're at 290 for the CIP right now?
Proposed is 290 for the CIP and
Okay.
200 for the MIP for 490 total.
Yeah, thank you.
Is proposed. So new budget items, I have a few. The first one that comes up to play high priority for us is it's a full-time grounds position. And let me explain some of the backstory on that. Right now, presently, we have 2 full-time grounds staff in Wyndham and 1 in Raymond. To give you kind of an idea, the Wyndham campus is about 108 acres. We have 11 athletic fields, and they're responsible for maintenance of the athletic fields. They do all the snow removal on the sidewalks. They take care of the playgrounds, the fence lines, irrigation systems, the parking striping, and the list goes on for that portion. So we've got 2 full-time, and we've been working with 2 part-time people. And the challenge is they're working the majority of the time. I'd say very short breaks here and there in between their time. And with that, we risk not continuing to have the same skill set. And if anyone would like to have an opportunity to go with Ben Brooks, who has just been an amazing addition to our program, and spend a time lining out a field and painting it, it's quite a challenging thing to make that all happen. So relying upon 2 part-time staff members that really they're employees at their own will is a bit of a challenge for us, in addition to the fact that they're really working more close to full-time. In Manchester, we've got 29 acres of property. In Raymond, 25 acres as well. So you can see we're talking of in excess of 150 acres of school property that we're trying to maintain right now with 3 people, which, you're looking at somewhere around 50 acres a person. And we can have discussions around how much of that is building and not maintained areas, but it goes up and down. We're also maintaining our equipment with some same people. And finally, they also maintain central office, Lord Schoolhouse, and John English School. So the position that we're looking at is actually reducing our part-time labor count by about $12,000 and then adding a full-time person in lieu of that. So there is a reduction that's offsetting that. The net increase is the $34,000. Benefits is a good chunk of that. And what this would allow us to do to have 3 full-time people. And where it really becomes a challenge is the wintertime when we're trying to do snow removal in schools the next day. We got lucky this year. None of our staff members were sick with this flu and the summer bug that went out. And we do have contingencies to both bring in contractors too, but that becomes really challenging because they're also working as well. So I really feel strongly that with the addition of hopefully of the RES field coming online shortly, and I'm hopeful that in the near future we'll complete the work down the primary school, that the work is not going to become less, it becomes more to get the work done. And I'm also very proud of the fact that I believe that we have the best maintained athletic fields in the entire state of Virginia high school. And again, I appreciate the support the board's given me for that, and I don't want to see that change. And I think we really need a staffing level to maintain that, particularly in lieu of the other areas that we're continuing to try to improve. There has been some times we've been challenged on the condition around the schools themselves. I think in the last year or so we've gotten better, but that is our challenge, is that the fields are easy to continue to work on. It's the weed whacking, the mowing around the schools, and cleaning up flower beds of the areas that also present a good front to the public as they come to our sites. And I feel it's improving, but we got some work to do to make that happen. Just kind of give you an idea, looking at, I went online and checked ground staffing references, and they were saying acceptable staffing level is 1 staff member for 20 acres. Okay. So it kind of give you an idea. We're talking about really, in the end, having 4 for about 150 acres. So we're about, we can say 30 acres, maybe 25. So I think we're in that area that would, again, say that why we need that additional person to have 1 in Raymond and 3 down here. 2 other items that are new is I put in the budget $15,000 for consulting services to help us with chemical management. It is a big gorilla. I don't know how you are familiar with GHS and what the changes that are made there and requirements for MSDSs and what's out there. It's huge. And getting a handle on all our chemicals in all our buildings and the process, who orders them and what happens, is something that with, say, 700 staff members, you can imagine the challenge to try to make that work. So the process that we're looking at is this is a one-time cost to go through and really help us get a good handle on all our inventory, dispose of chemicals that either shouldn't be there or that aren't there, and to finalize a system for chemical ordering so it comes through a central person so that we're not ordering 10 gallons of X in 2 different places, only needing 3. And as part of that, we have a program called MSD Online, which allows us to look at all our SDS sheets electronically. And I want to get that updated so it's reflective of all the material that we have. And this is, the state of Maine has had a requirement for this for science rooms. We've had science teachers who have had stipends for doing this. But in reality, it needs to be every chemical, means art rooms. And what I find interesting that, if I can find it here, when I was at SAFI, we had a definition of chemical, and it was if it came in a box, in a container, it was a chemical. Okay, and someone asked me about a can of soup. I said, well, it's in a container, it's a chemical. Well, I found, this is a definition I found by a PhD, so someone, I guess, who knows a lot about chemicals. And the definition is that chemical is any substance consisting of matter. So if you have some antimatter, I think you're okay. But if it consists of matter, it's a chemical. We need to have MSDS for it. And it even gets to the point that if you go to Walmart and you buy hand sanitizer and you have oral hand sanitizer, that's actually 2 SDSs you have to have, not 1. So literally every chemical. So the goal of the work would be to work through what we have, standardize on certain things. I want to give the teachers, they want cleaning chemicals, they want them using the chemicals that we use in the schools from our custodial staff, so it's the same product. And that way we're really vetted till we know what we've got. Now, I believe we have great staff. I think they're working safely, they're working well. This just ties everything up and really makes it tight, which is important. The last piece is a safety and security specialist. I don't know if you're familiar that Mike Duffy works in the facilities department. He's a fourth employee. His focus has been on workman's comp and safety and security and ergonomics. And I really feel we've made a great progress with that. And I just want to give you some figures to give you an idea. So in 2015, we restructured our plowing contract. Prior to that, our staff was plowing parking lots as well as trying to do sidewalks and treatment. We restructured it. We said, okay, our staff will no longer do parking lots. Our staff is going to focus on the walking surfaces and treatment. And in 2014, our losses for workman's comp were around $418,000 a year, so approaching $500,000. Not all slip, trips, and falls, but I'll tell you there was 51 of them overall, all-time workman's comp. 51 injuries were falls. So that's a pretty big number. If we look at the total numbers of injuries here, we're approaching around 151 appear to be on falls. Okay. So we restructured that in our, we were looking at 418,000 in 2014, 179,000 in 2015, which was Mike's second year working as a two-fifths employee, down to 65,000 in year 3 of Mike's when he went to four-fifths. And this year we're presently tracking 28,000. So you're looking at a cost of 418 down to 28. So my proposal is to move Mike from the four-fifths to the full-time. And one of the things I want to have him do is become that central person for the chemical ordering, so that when there's someone who wants to order a chemical, it will run through him for approval, so to make sure we have the STS locations going in, all that stuff will be part of it, which I think would be a nice enhancement to our safety program. Okay. Only got 300 pages to go. Okay. Okay. Run over the new items. So at this point in time, again, I've talked about CIP projects being flat. Really, real quickly, the CIP project we have proposed. There's a transportation office we still presently pay on. High school lockers, we're in year 3 or 4. The primary school boiler plant, we're year 2 or 4. We put a new boiler this year there. It's up and running. Jordan Small Middle School boiler plant, year 1 of 5. Middle school 2-classroom portable. Right now I say year 1 of 3. Again, that's potential. I'll finalize that. Primary school phone system, year 1 of 4. High school portable adult ed, I say 1 of 3. That may be 1 of 4. And the treatment plant generator, 1 of 4. Those are the projects we have slated for CIP for 2019. And as far as MIP projects, we had the second phase of the elevator controls. If you remember from last year, we had money. The elevator controls in the primary school were obsolete, and we had money in last year's budget for the first phase of it. We have 22,000 to finish that up. 36,000 to replace the emergency lights at the primary school. They were brand new in '87, so I think we're 88. I think we've got our money worth out of that. I'm proposing oil tank removal at the primary school for 23,000. Creating intervention spaces at the primary school. There should be 3 on the second floor for teachers to work in a room with either 1 or 2 students at a time in a pull-out. Right now, if you're familiar with that building, there's intervention desks that are in the hallway. This would actually add 3 small rooms on the second floor, so it could be used by special ed. It could be used for pull-outs with 1 or 2 kids. Might have been used with me when I was there because I would have been not as distracted and run the door closed, but would have been good. We do have money in for site work for the middle school portable at 45,000. Money for a freezer door replacement. The middle school, it literally won't close, so I think it's probably an idea at a time to change that one. Site work for the high school portable at 50,000. We're replacing a mower that was brand new in 2004. They get used every day. That's getting tired. It's been a pretty good run, 14 years. I'm doing some electrical maintenance, and then there's some site work for the generator for the treatment plant at 22,000. So that's what I have for MIP projects. Finally, for the CRP, haven't finalized that with Dawn, so I don't have a recommendation to give to the Finance Committee. Then that would have to go to the Facilities Committee and to you. But just give you some of the projects that I have slated for that. Would be, we have an issue with the high school, the old gym. If you're familiar with it, if you walk down the hallways, you'll see about every 4 feet there's water that leaks in the ceiling tile. It's because the weep holes from the masonry are below the roof. So when they renovated the building, they added insulation, and the weep holes are designed to drain any moisture out of the wall and back onto the roof, but now it drains it out of the wall inside the roof because the roof is flashed above where the weep holes are. So what we're looking at doing is cladding that building so that the water no longer goes through the brick and down into that space. There is money in there proposed to upgrade the fire alarm system in the primary school, high school barrel roof, which is a challenge because it leaks, and I can go into that further another time. To complete the replacement of the roof at Jordan Small, we have 1 phase left. We're about half done up there. There's money to support the transportation office fit up and changeover as we move from the current site to the new site. In addition to that, there's money to create a parking space at the Strout property. In the event that we have to park buses or the project's delayed, we need a place to put those buses. That's in the budget as well. There's money for the architectural design for the middle school, ADA improvements, high school lighting control replacement, RES playground, and the Wyndham Primary School site work. So those are proposed projects at some funding level that John and I will review and bring to the Finance Committee and then decide from there how much further it goes. Okay. And that's kind of what I have. I do have the time. I can, if you'd like me to, I can go through, I've gone through and listed all of the changes that are above $15,000 in my budget. I can explain what every one of them is. If you'd like me to do that, if you'd like me to give the abbreviated version, just answer questions, I can do that too. There's 22 items that I would be going through and tell you what they are. And I know the lines and what have you, or we can just answer questions.
I just have questions.
Would you find that helpful for him to list his amounts? Would you want to just ask?
I think I can read them.
I know I have some.
I'm okay.
Okay.
Questions?
We'll put a question.
Okay.
Do you want to start?
Yeah. I'm just curious, in the primary school, because we know it's a very tight school with space, where are 3 intervention spaces going in?
Yep. On the second floor in each of the houses, there's a storage room.
Yeah.
So what we're actually doing is we're taking space out of the storage room. There'll be a door cut into the hallway into the storage space, and it will create an additional room off the hallway that will be, it's a roughly, I think it's a 9 by 12 room that will be used for a teacher and a few kids.
We had all that wasted space and we didn't know it? No, I'm kidding.
It's going to require probably a little culling out of storage, but Dr. Rhodes and I have talked, but he feels he can make that happen.
Because I know they were using it before to doing their photocopying and their laminating, and it was, because I went to help, and it's kind of like we were going into the attic.
It is, and they'll still be doing some of that in the different parts of the state. But this will be finished space, so there's a ceiling that's fire rated. It has ventilation. It'll be a space that's designed for occupancy by kids.
Okay, I just have one more. I'm just curious. I noticed in here for RES there is, and it's all I could find. It might be something else, but there's like $2,200 for wood chips or whatever for the playground. Is there any money in there to do any more at the playground? Because we ended up with, what we ended up with. And I know we were going to continue, but I can't remember what the
as far
timeline.
As there's actually money in the budget for wood chips at primary school, Manchester, and RES, and we kind of know what we need each year and we replenish it. In the CRP funding that request we're bringing to the Finance Committee, there is funding to complete the RES project. Is one of the recommended items I'm going to bring to that. It's not in the operating budget. What I try to do with CRP funding is look at things that are one-time costs that we're not going to come back and have to repeat. So that's where I put that funding.
Okay, I was just curious because I didn't see anything to go on.
There is no funding for either of the site work projects in the operating budget.
Okay.
Questions?
It's got nothing to do with it, but like the open spaces that are in the elementary school, you probably could too expensive to ever make use of that.
I don't know if you've seen them. This past summer, we actually spent quite a bit of time to refurbish them.
Yeah.
If you have a chance to go to primary school and look in, they're actually a condition now that they actually really could be used. And I would really like to look at long term. We've been starting to clean up the courtyards in the high school too. A way to better utilize that space, because that's a tremendous space that it's underutilized right now. So I definitely want to look into that, how we can make that be more useful, because it's too bad that we have that space it's not utilizing. I think it would be less expensive to find a way to use that better as opposed to adding more space somewhere.
I do know on that same thing, because I've been there, and there are some teachers who do take their classes out into those little courtyards for projects and whatever they're doing. Because I think one of them has I don't know if there's seats. It's kind of like
it's an amphitheater.
Like
yeah. But they were really kind of overgrown, and this past summer we spent quite a bit of time to give them a facelift. They look really nice. We also, as part of the restoration of the building, all the EPIS was resealed, and it had elastomeric paint put on it, so it's reconditioned. So those two spaces in the primary school are really, they'll be used, as soon as the weather's nice.
Other than ducks.
We're hoping that without the cover, the ducks won't come back because the vegetation that had overgrown is pretty much all gone. We may have to take one of the owls that Chris has at the high school down if they show up.
Nobody told them we were the Eagles.
So I've got a couple of questions, and maybe, Don, you might be able to answer this one for me. The safety and security piece that you had recently spoke about with Mike Duffy, is that falling under your budget?
No.
That is not. That falls under, I would assume that falls under yours, Don.
The safety security, yeah, he's referring to as the increase of 0.5.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, I was confused. The salary for that position is under the facilities budget. The savings that I was talking about in workman's comp, those are premiums that I think would have been across the district.
Okay. So why does Mike fall under your budget? Why wouldn't that fall under yours, Don?
I just think, well, he's been more of an assistant in Bill's position.
Okay.
More in the field, if you will. And actually, Holly Paulson has been helping me with this stuff, and we just needed something, and she does not have time to do that either. So we just felt like it was a good opportunity for Mike, who has a background in that industry, to be the person that was a point person. I really didn't do another direct report, so.
Okay.
Bill's very generous. He gives
Nice
all the
way of
pay.
putting it there.
Well, the thing is that the safety and security actually does fall into my department. The workman's comp really doesn't, but that's one of the things that he has been helping me with. The ergonomics is under my thing, and then as far as establishing a safety team, again, that's all under the facilities that leads that. But workman's comp, you're correct, is generally would be more in Don's area. But
okay. So you had rattled off some statistics as far as our decrease in workplace injury over the last 3 years.
Yep.
I understood it that as we go through a 3-year cycle, our workers' comp premiums will start to decrease. Have they
that's correct.
decreased? This is a question for Don.
At this point, they have not. In point of fact, the premium, so what is referred to as a mod rate, and if you're 1.0 means that you're on industry par. If you're minus, it means that you're actually your claims data is less than the norm, and over that means that you're having more incidents on your workforce than other places. We've been at a higher mod rate over 1 for some time now. So the premium has escalated as a result of that, and we're now just starting to go to the other side. The mod rate has not been delivered to us at this point, but I certainly will share that with you when that occurs.
When do they typically deliver the new mod rate?
I'm thinking it must be April, May-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll make sure you get that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Mind if I continue?
Continue.
You said that, Bill, we have right around 150 acres, or did I miss?
Plus or minus, yeah.
Is that 150 mowable acres?
No, that's total property.
Okay. How many mowable acres would you say we actually have?
Well, I talked to Ben about the main campus, and we have about 20 acres of athletic fields. To kind of give you that was the number he came up with on the main campus. So there's quite a bit of other areas outside of that, in front of the high school, the side. It doesn't count the primary school, play areas. So it just athletic fields, which are often mowed every other day because of the MPA requirements for grass height. It's a pretty significant amount of area right there.
Okay.
But 107 is the total acreage on the main campus, and we're probably somewhere around. I have to get back on the usable acres. I hate to guess, but I think it's more than 50%.
Okay.
But,
so you currently have 3 full-time staff at this point, and you're looking to increase that to 4.
Correct. 1 in Raymond and 2 down here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered subcontracting certain pieces of their job, like say irrigation repair?
We actually do. We have a landscaping contract with Joe Gagney, who does a lot of the bed work for us and the mulching, because they come in with their tools and their equipment and their blowers, and they do that quicker. So we actually do that. Thirsty Turf does a lot of our irrigation maintenance, but there's a point you go so far with your own crew and then you hand it off. You still have some time associated with that.
Right.
It gets into the, if it's just changing the electronic head, they do it themselves. But if it's something more than that, then they have to get, Thirsty Turf to come out and work on it. Like when we lost the control board last year, as a real vandalism, that was all a Thirsty Turf job. Can you take care of that?
Okay.
Can you just wait 1 second?
Yeah.
It was 2 to 3, not 3 to 4 groundskeepers, wasn't it?
In Wyndham, it's 2 to 3.
Okay.
Correct. It would be a staff of 4 total.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's a full-time person
Raymond, right?
who works in Raymond.
Okay.
Raymond and does some work in Manchester as well.
Yeah. I know. That's why I was asking. Because the book says 2 to 3. That's why I was just making sure that was clear. So it should be 4.
Okay.
3
And then,
4?
Yeah, 3 currently, 4, and then 1 more.
Yep.
The chemical management piece. I kind of know the industry, and it is a huge monster. I can't even imagine how many different types of products that are actually in the school. Do you anticipate that 15,000 and you will have pretty much this project wrapped up within a year as far as the chemical inventory and what you have?
I do, and the reason I said that is a few years ago I did have a summer student who went through and started to put the base information into MSDS online. The problem is that things have changed since then, so I don't know how far off the mark we are. And then there's a whole issue around standardizing and developing that process for ordering that we need to work with. So I feel it's a good number, and I will make it work for that. It's not an ongoing cost. I'm not anticipating or recommending it would continue beyond that, because I'm really hopeful that with Mike's additional time that he can become the gatekeeper, or that position becomes the gatekeeper to make sure that the chemicals are ordered, and we can start moving staff away from necessarily maybe ordering the Walmart version because it's cheaper. If we have an SDS for Perel or whatever we're going to have, we stick with that one product, and we don't keep introducing additional materials. So I hope I can do it for less than that, actually. I don't have a firm number on that yet. I'm working on getting some proposals on what it would take to do it, but we're talking about really 6 sites, 6 school buildings. So you start looking at that, in terms of building in square foot. It's not, 600,000 divided by that kind of money is not an awful lot of time and effort to go through every building, every space, open every door, and see what's there. So.
Okay. All right. Good job, Joe.
All right. You made a comment a little while ago about when we were talking about the playgrounds, about how none of the site work is in the operating budget.
That's correct.
You said for either. I'm wondering what you were referring to, like what 2 projects you were referring to.
Yeah. So we have two site work projects that are presently permanent that we've been working towards. The first one is the Wyndham Primary School project. That actually permit expires at the end of next year to get the work done. So we're not done. We'd have to actually for an extension or a new permit. And we've completed 3 out of the 4 phases on that. The staff parking lot we created on the track side. We created the 2 playground pods. So without the swings, so I guess that's probably 3/4 put together. So the new swings are not there. Because of the limitations of space, we reused the old swings until such time we could finish the project. So that's the second phase. The third phase was the front reconfiguration of the bus repair and drop off. And the last phase is expansion of the play area, and a fenced-in play area so that all the kids can be in one contained space, and it's ADA accessible. Right now, if you look at the Seahouse Park play area, it's not. Even though we've paved it, made it better to get up there, it's the grades don't meet ADA, the grade requirements for that. So the plan long term would be this one playground off the back of that that's fenced in, that's accessed out of the rear door that's closest to the library and also the cafeteria space. And it expands that playground back into the woods, so it's one big rectangular field plus a ball field, which is the end of the parking area. So that's that project. The other project is the RES playground project, which we got the field up to base grade, and the hope should be that we can get that project finished up this year. In the very near future. We have the water quality treatment filters roughed in, but they're not completed. So those are two projects.
All right. So yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I understand how you put things into the budget, because there's a lot of site work things that are in the operating budget, and then there's some site work that's not. And so, from my understanding, the site work that's not in the operating budget is those projects that are occurring over more than 1 year, or
one time. Like if you look at it's right, because there are a couple.
Because you've got the site work for the treatment plant generator in there. You've got the site work for the high school portable.
You're absolutely correct. So the two portables and the generator are things that really have to happen. Okay. So if I don't have the site work for the two portables, if the raise the hand gets turned down, I don't have the funding to put those in. So we really have to put the portable in for the middle school. I have 2 classrooms and no kids to go. So that's why it's in the budget. By having the site work, the larger site work projects out of the budget and in the raise your hand CRP, it really is at board discretion as how we fund that. Maybe a year or 2 or 3 or 4 that we do that. Don't have that option for the other projects that are in the budget. They really need to move ahead this summer so we're ready for school.
All right. That helps me understand better.
Okay. Thanks. And I'm glad you brought that up because I hadn't processed that. So yeah, that was the thinking behind that. So. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty. And next we have Bob Hickey, who is our technology director.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to pull back a little bit to a bird's eye view, because sometimes a lot of these initiatives feel a little bit disjointed until we pull back with a bird's eye view and tie them all together. So starting with the audit that was completed within the last year. The audit said customer service improvements could be attained by supporting more of a uniform platform, investing in newer technology for the clients, plus upgrading the backbone of the network. This is precisely what's been going on in all our major projects. And then tying from the audit directly into the strategic plan for the district. By 2021, all members of the RSU 14 learning community will be proficient users of technology, will have consistent and equitable access to the technology resources needed to support mastery of personalized learning goals. The strategic vision and strategic planning for optimal technology resources for students and staff, design a team to oversee deployment of new and reallocation of devices, create a process and procedures to ensure healthy network and external equipment, develop relevant professional development for staff to enhance instruction. So this pulls back to the larger expenditure items in the current year's budget. These are in line with bringing us into line with the district strategic plan, as well as accomplishing the goals of the audit. So what we are talking about this year for accomplishments, we've upgraded the 4th and 5th grade of both campuses to MacBook Airs. We've received very positive feedback from those schools at those grade levels, and I'm sure you've heard from Dr. Danini on that, as well as Randy and Raymond, and so Beth. I'm sorry. So iBoss implementation for much better web filter. 110 access points and switches were installed this year, and upgraded the fiber connections for the district, particularly between the high school and the primary school. Goals to accomplish for the upcoming year of 2018-19, refresh the existing MacBook Airs for a 1-to-1 for students and teachers, continuing the 1-to-1 ratio at the high school level for those grades. Leverage the existing 4-year-old MacBook Airs, targeting replacement of white Macs, which are approaching 9 years old, particularly for grades K and 1 are the most painful points. replace the existing PCs in grade 3 with MacBook Airs, so the entire school and 2 as well are on the same Apple platform. Pulling back to the audit, it said get on a consistent platform. And the existing PCs that are currently in grades 2 and 3 would be repurposed for staff devices. Unfortunately, we have ed techs who have the 9-year-old $48 MacBooks, and they're very tired. Randy has mentioned that in Raymond, they're little used because they're so slow and ineffective. So we've tried to target with every major initiative reuse, repurpose of existing, so there is little to no waste. Additionally, a major initiative for this year is add 5 iPads for grades K to 3 on both campuses. This would bring K1 from 5 devices per class to 10, and grades 2 and 3 to 5 devices. This leverages the students lacking the keyboard skills, the tactile skills. The iPads are great devices, and there are specialized apps that are targeted for these areas. Randy and Kyle can speak to this later, of Lexia in particular, and many other apps that are very important for those grade levels. And I'd like to take a sidebar and thank Mrs. Briggs for giving us a heads up on the Chicago Apple field trip. Came out in the news, and we are looking at those. I briefly spoke with Apple to say, you know, your prices are around $600. They're touting these to be $299. I'm estimating half, but there's a lot of buried costs in there. There's no Apple Care. The new devices would not be appreciably cheaper than the devices we already have in budget, and we will get updated pricing for the newer, cheaper devices and substitute that from now till the end of the budget year. However, don't look for big savings. What you're getting mostly is you're going from Rev 5 of the current iPad to Rev 6. So it's a better device. They're both 32 gig. You get no additional storage space. The plus side that you would get with a new iPad is they're optimized for what's called Apple Pencil, and it really allows, you know, great control for artistic and projects, things like that. The pencil itself is $99 ordinarily, and with the massive Apple discount, $10 off, it'd be $89.
Wow.
An alternative to that, Logitech has one for $50. So, and you know, this is news as of 1 day ago, so I'll meet with the educators and feel how strongly they need that. I doubt they would say they would need it for the one-to-one along with the iPads, but we'll work that out and get back details to the board. Upcoming year, we will target the Wyndham Primary School wireless access points. Those kind of got overshadowed in the work from this past summer, so they're our top priority. We're intentionally dragging our heels on upgrading the wireless in Wyndham Middle School and the high school, because there's the possibility out there that 2019 through 20, the state may come in with an initiative. Realistically, if they come in with an initiative that they'll pay for schools, then there would be a year of planning, so you're really not going to see it till July 2020. So it's going to be out there a way. That's why we're intentionally dragging our heels on spending local money first to see if there's something else, and we can get by on what we have. So that is the major initiatives. I know that there's already been discussion that the software line it looks large in my area, but it's largely a shift from the curriculum area to mine. I can speak to that in more detail. Just jumping quickly down things. There's a 21.36% increase of $1,760 in professional technical services. In the past, we've leveraged that with our current web server Savvy, and we would use that existing money and slightly more for automating scripts of account creation. In this past year, another accomplishment we've made is we put Office into the cloud, Office 365, which that gives us failover. If the high school server room burned down, then a critical application such as email would still be up. There are redundant backups in the cloud. We don't need to worry about any of that. And so as we have so many disparate systems, we're constantly growing and adding things because there's more need. Then it becomes a large manual process to make accounts, update accounts. Somebody has a name change, somebody goes. So we're working desperately on those. So we have what's called UMRA, User Management Resource Administration, and that's a scripting program. So some of this contracting money we would use for experts in this area to script that to help us out. And another part of that is now that Office Exchange lives in the cloud for email, that's a separate thing that has to be done separately. So we're targeting that. And then we're also looking down the road for automating the Google accounts. And all of this is manual, which takes more of my staff's time, and we want to minimize how many people we add to my staff. So that's why we're targeting these areas. Okay. Lease purchase. That covers the three major areas that I've already addressed. Request for one-to-one funding of MacBook Airs at the high school, the iPads, and then you would think that the buyout of the existing Airs would be in this section, but it's not. It's over in the technology-related hardware for $52,800. So those major initiatives largely are under here, and then with that other area. For the software licensing and annual fees, we've recategorized this, not only a shift from curriculum over to my area, but how we target, how we track software, what is necessary to keep the district running, and what's educational. So there's non-educational, educational components. And if we look at just from a large view, the big minuses and the big pluses and see where we land, it looks like we're taking out $162,511 plus $122,708 for a grand total of $285,220 plus change. And then when we add the educational components, $311,619 and $285, I'm sorry, the 311 is that component, and then we take out the 285 from before. There's a 26,000 offset. So there's very little new software in the budget to account for that 26,000. Like Dev Express is new. That's something that Mike Pelletier is using with his development. There's a semantic SIMED module that we're adding on for malware, and our Veeam backup software, we bought a module there for Microsoft SQL backup. So there's not a lot new. I could give you more detail at some point in the future because it is big money if you wanted to see exactly how much, but a lot of it is shift of minor increases from different vendors over the year. So there's not like a massive amount of money in software difference that's unaccounted for. Okay, and technology-related hardware as well. The disaster recovery core and backup switches, that's on 77 of 253. Under technology-related hardware, 36,000. And what that is for, I want to say like close to 10 years now, I think I'm up here occasionally begging for money for the disaster recovery center. It's never been complete. So we finally got power management in there with the massive UPS. We finally got cooling in there. We finally have some storage in there. So this is the final stage to bring it to a true disaster recovery center. So it will be replacement servers for some servers we're running that are very old. A new core switch. We have a newer core switch we've purchased. We have the old one, which we would gladly repurpose for this function because hopefully we're never going to have to use a disaster recovery, but it is so old we can't get support from anybody for it, not parts, not software support. So we're targeting that, and then we're also looking at saving money. Instead of a traditional disaster recovery large core switch that could run in excess of $30,000, we're looking to see if we can do something similar, lower key, with a couple of Meraki's at lower price. So if we can afford some savings in there, we're looking to do that as well. So the transfer out of $120,000, this is what covers the laptop program. So I've kind of hit the highlights, and at this point, I'm happy to take questions if you have any.
I'm not convinced that we need any additional iPads.
Okay.
We are going to, because we are buying out a lot of machines, we have other machines that are going to be moved down, a multiple down to the elementary grades that could be used down there. I don't see buying iPads so kids can draw better than they go to art. That's kind of good, hands-on. I think there's a lot of proof out there that their children spend way too much time in front of electronics as it is. And I think we have sufficient in the school in order to teach them. And I think I like face-to-face, the teacher and student. When I've gone into the elementary grades, to me, that's where they're getting the most of is their socialization with the other kids there and with their teacher. So I guess I'm not sold on purchasing any more iPads. So if anybody wants to speak to that, I disagree. Well, I would like to hear why from the users or somebody.
Okay. At this point, if we could bring in Kyle or Brandy to speak on this.
Thanks. Pull it up. Thanks for the opportunity. And Randy's going to speak as well.
I think they're always on.
He's a teacher voice too.
Not with Randy.
Randy can too.
Unless Randy.
I think he taught bands. So yeah, thanks for a few minutes here. I'm gonna talk kind of in generalities and a couple of specifics, and then if you want more information, be glad to. I know you've only got a certain amount of time here tonight. I want to kind of take a quick walk back in history, kind of for folks that may have not been on the board for say the last 5 or so years. In 2016, I actually presented information about iPads because in the budget that year we had budgeted for 150 iPads, approximately 150 iPads at the primary school, and the question was asked, what if that number went to 75, and what would that mean? So I presented about at that time what were some of the benefits over the laptops of these iPads, and most of those benefits still exist. Another piece that's important in 2013 to prepare for actually the budgets in the upcoming years of 15 and 16, I polled our teachers and said, what device do you think would be of most benefit to our students? And I know that's 5-year-old data. However, 80% of teachers said that would be their preferred device. They also said they see a need for laptops as well, and I would agree with that. I polled some of our teacher leaders this week. They said ideally what would be best is a situation where you've got a classroom of approximately 10 iPads and 10 laptops. And then that way all students could get on devices if needed. The 10 would allow them to be able to do some of the interventions that currently we do, where I see a lot of creativity going on, which, I mean, envision this. You've got 3 kindergarten classrooms next to each other. Each right now has 5 iPads in it. And they want to use one of our early literacy intervention programs. A couple come to mind, Lexia Starfall. A lot of times to just make it work the most effective, they will cluster those 5 laptops for a total of 15. You'll see our kids walk down the hallways with their laptops to go to one space to all do that program at the same time. Teachers do that because they'd rather prefer to have them be on the iPads than on the laptops, because the efficiency that they're able to do is about close to 50% more on those iPads using the same program on the laptops. Now, there's some programs that are on the laptops that you really aren't able to run on the iPad, so there's that need as well. More overwhelmingly, though, it's the iPads that allows for that piece to happen. And I can speak from personal experience. I have 3 students that I work with weekly that are some of our most struggling students in kindergarten, and I purposely watched one of them use the one program in our academic support setting where there's only primarily laptops, and I noticed how much more difficulty she was having compared to when she works with me and she's got her iPad. And it really is about the device. And so I think that's one piece. But then when we think about how we want to transform learning here for our students, there is the real benefits of how that mobility and ease of the touch of that device allows for not just kindergarten and first grade, but second and third graders to be able to use it to do things like collect evidence on their learning, be able to share their learning with the home. There's some really good apps that only run either on iPads or run much more efficiently on iPads that allow for that homeschool connection. And I had one teacher say to me, my parents really appreciate it's a second and third grade teacher that was sharing. I really appreciate how I am able to share almost in real time what their kids are learning. However, I'm not able to do as much as I really want to do it, and as much as they really want as a parent for me to do it. because I'm using one iPad for a classroom of close to 20 something kiddos. So I mean, I think there's some in general some real benefits to the iPad over the laptop, and things like ease of use, the efficiency and productivity kids have with it. And then when we think about our our strategic plan around just taking learning and transforming it, there's ability to do it both with laptops and iPads. However, the iPad itself allows for more transformation of learning. So it doesn't mean the laptop can't do some of that same thing. I think it's back to the other benefits of ease of the use, the mobility of the device itself. And then just on a practical note, a lot of our teachers are demanding document cameras. Document cameras cost somewhere between $100 and $150, and our writing program that we have actually encourages all teachers to have it. If you have an iPad, you can buy a stand for somewhere around $60, $70 instead of buying the document camera itself. And it does even more than the document camera would do. For example, actually allow you to use the stand and do video in regards to having kids or having different pieces of work being videoed that then can be replayed at another time to continue learning. So Randy can take and share some more information, but that's just kind of overall. I'm glad to answer questions too.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying, Marge, about screen time, and they need to interact, they need to play, they need to, and I think we always have to be aware of that. Like, they're getting probably enough screen time outside of school, a lot of them. So it's not the same type of screen time, obviously. If you think back, we've been working towards a more proficiency-based, learner-centered approach for I don't know how many years now, 8 probably, and that means more individualization, and technology helps the staff make that happen. So it's very difficult if you don't have technology in this day and age to be able to customize. Different students are at so many different levels and have so many different learning styles. So what I see at RES right now is the iPad's being used a lot and old laptops being used to backfill because we don't have enough devices that really meet the needs of those kids developmentally. That they're still learning their letters and numbers, and then we give them a laptop and they have to log in, and the letters aren't in the right order and the numbers aren't where they think they are, and they often need adult help to do that, which isn't efficient use of the adult time in the room, whereas an iPad's just much more fluid, and a lot of the kids are used to interacting with the screen, so they can get right onto that. I also see the need for the teachers would like to have an iPad handy, because if you're mobile as a teacher and you're moving around the classroom, and you have projection capabilities, which most of the staff does now, you can be putting things up on the screen for kids. You can be using a program like Classroom Dojo to reward positive behaviors you're seeing happening without having to say anything. You're just doing that with the interactive screen. And an iPad obviously is much more portable. So it's a little bit of a struggle right now to have different devices, trying to mix them in the classroom for different things all at the same time. So if you've spent any time in an elementary school, you're probably familiar with the center model, where you've got 3 or 4 stations that students are circulating through. And with only 5 iPads right now, that's not really a station, because the ratio of devices to kids isn't high enough to make it work that way. So I think because we're a little bit short of iPads, we're actually kind of tying our hands and not using the full capacity at RES right now, which is concerning. So K1, I think an iPad is a perfect match, and it would certainly be good to have some available to 2 and 3 as well. But they really need those devices coming down from the high school, because 2nd and 3rd grade, I mean, we've got 8-year-old machines with 6 and 7-year-old kids, and frankly, I think, like, I have 3rd grade staff that really would like to do more with technology, but they just don't feel comfortable spending as much time on the devices because they're not sure it's going to work well. So, they hopefully will be the first targeted group to get the high school machines that are being repurposed, I guess you'd call it.
I agree. because I have a tough time with this chat. On all of those airs that are moving, not the new ones we're buying or anything, it's all the ones that are moving down. Where are they going?
Well, largely, the primary place they would go is to replace anything with keyboards in K and 1 because those are so sad. But also at third grade, they're taking MEAs down to that level. So a keyboard device is better for that assessment. And then for second and third grade, they're doing NWEA. So that's a better device for taking an assessment than an iPad. So largely, it seems like on the surface, 1100, wow, you got all these extra computers. It seems that way, but until you look at it closely, and then you also pull back to the bird's eye view and say, we're not talking about 1 year out. We're not talking about having 1100 spares for now. We're talking about filling in a real need where they've got machines that are substandard at the very low levels to supplement what they're doing with iPads, because we're not asking one-to-one iPads at those levels, and they need something. And then also the 4.5 MacBook Airs that we purchased this year, we're not Milty. This is us purchasing through Apple. So when there's a Milty program in the past, there's a 2% spare pool, which was never been enough anyway. And when we buy direct from Apple, there's no spare pool other than what we have. So there's a spare pool for 4 or 5. There will be a 2% spare pool. No, there won't. This will be also an Apple purchase for the high school. So now we've got 1,100 machines, no spare pool at that level as well. Now 7 and 8 is Multi. We don't really need to worry about those because those will have a spare pool which we would use first. So what I'm saying is we have grades 4 through 12, and a good part, not all, but a good part of those grades, that spare pool is covering all those machines plus supplementing the iPads that are at the lower grade. So it sounds like on the surface you've got all these extra machines and we're kind of wasting money, but we're not. And also with a spare pool, if you've got 1,100 this year, you're not going to have 1,100 next year. You'd be lucky if you had 900. And then it's going to drop faster as it goes. So that spare pool is going to be kind of our life savings, in addition to supporting the lower grades, which quite honestly, year after year, they inherited the netbooks. They inherited the $48 MacBooks. And so they don't complain, and they take it and they do what they can with it, but we've never really targeted support for the lowest grades. So
Still not sold. Sorry.
Maybe this will help. Kyle, I hope you don't mind these are notes from 2 years ago.
Sure.
It indicates some specifics about what would be done with an iPad, and it does a pretty good job with it. There was discussion.
Well, should we be buying more iPads then, unless very, very expensive Mac is?
Well, for the 1100, it's like you lease the car for 4 years and you just have a small payment at the end. It's kind of foolish to turn away that kind of hardware, especially when we do need it as spare support if for nothing else. So I can't imagine that for $52,000 or whatever it is dollars, we wouldn't purchase those because they'd certainly be used. So that part, I don't see it as wasteful at all.
Well, I know other people have similar or some questions regarding it, so I'll let that go.
Yep.
Okay.
So what is the cost of the iPads? What is the total cost?
Sure. It's down on page 75 of 253, and it's the last line in the lease purchase. It's $36,712 per year times 4 years. So you're talking $146,848 over 4 years.
Okay. And I think I might have seen an email earlier this week. I don't have that information in front of me. Maybe you have it in front of you. Do you have a breakdown per grade? Is that what that email was right there?
Sure.
Okay, never mind. I got the email.
Okay. Yep.
I don't have the information in front of me, but I do have it. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I don't have any others.
So, when do the younger grades get new devices, or are they always getting the hand-me-downs?
Well, they got iPads the 5 per grade K1. And then things were stretched and moved around where the teacher got a device 2-3 and there weren't really devices for 2-3. So that's really been kind of like the only new purchase for these really low grade levels, because they inherited the Dell laptops they're using in 2-3, which those are 6 years old. Those were originally purchased for 6th grade when the board said we don't want iPads for 6th grade, get them laptop machines. And those were intended to go to the high school, but that never worked out and they got moved around the district. And so after the high school got rid of their netbooks, then they got MacBook Airs. And so those were repurposed elsewhere.
All right, because when we met last month, you said that there's a lot of life left in these high school computers, and that's why we can pass them down. But I'm thinking, if we pay the $52,000 to keep the computers, why not just keep them at the high school for a couple more years and get the younger grades newer devices if that's what they really need? Has that been a thought?
It's been a thought, and the board makes the decision on what we're going to do. But also the board's wish has been for a long time to get us more of a flat level on the purchasing. And if we push off purchases for a different area, then we're going to get that bump later down the road. So we're kind of good, not perfect. That early buyout from Milty kind of threw us off a little, but we're kind of flat where we are now. If you want to do, regular predictable expenditures, but it's like anything else. It's like when you don't refresh your car when you need to, you might have to refresh 2 of your cars in your family later. It's that kind of thing.
And the other thing on the hand-me-down model, I mean, the 4th and 5th grade staff was ecstatic that they weren't getting hand-me-downs because that's what they've always had. So we're a lot better off than we were a while back. But also just the younger kids, the wear and tear on the device. It's not going home. It's not leaving the building. The elementary staff that I know are very careful about taking care of this equipment because they don't know when the next one might show up. So if they have a used machine, it's going to take less of a beating, frankly, than it would with an older kid, just because of the use level. So they hold up really well, and this, Bob's staff services them, takes care of them, and really keeps them going. So,
and Randy brought up a good point in private conversations the other day. If you were to keep these older devices at the high school, they would no longer be Milty supported. So whatever spares we would need, we'd be buying out of pocket, which would not be cheap. And if they were moved to the lower grades, you're talking K-3, less damage, not taken home. They'll last longer at that level as well, is another consideration to think about.
So I guess my question to Marge is, what will it take for her to purchase these computers?
I'm just not sold on it. That's all. Because there is nothing that's if somebody could tell, there's a lot of life in a computer, especially one that very rarely gets used or gets used infrequently. And I think, and I would like to make sure, I would like to feel like we were not putting unrealistic time lives on these things that we're purchasing. We know what happens with buses, and that worked out really well because the bottom starts to rot and blah, blah, all this kind of crap or whatever, and you got a safety issue. But you take an iPad, for instance. An iPad lasts a long time. It really does. I know people who've had them a long time. You don't buy the guarantee warranty or anything that comes with it, and you just beat the life out of that thing, And same thing with computers. I think we've always gone by the fact of, okay, when we get the computer, it comes with 4 years?
For warranty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It used to come with, so we took that as like the gospel. They're good for 4 years. After that, it's iffy. Do we know? After 4 years, they're iffy? I don't know. But
thanks for bringing that up, Marge, because in this purchase of high school MacBook Airs, it was Chris's good idea to target 3 years of Apple Care instead of 4 to bring down the cost, because it's north of $200 for the Apple Care contract. So it reduced the price $45,000 a year. It was significant. So, and then we're only taking a risk that 4th year because that's when you're not covered.
So I guess I would say you don't have to keep trying to convince me. I'm not convinced, but I'm only one person, so it really doesn't matter. But thank you. I appreciate your zest in trying to get what you feel is best for your staff and your students. I think it's great. I just don't happen to agree.
Do you have a computer you can let Marge use for a moment?
I have
An iPad, we could hook her up.
I have it. Oh, I don't
She's
like
got one
iPads.
already.
I don't like
You'll have
iPads.
one for you.
Wait,
No, but in fairness, I mean, something that will come up in deliberations, it always does, is the fact of whether we need top of the line machines, MacBook Airs. I mean, how do you justify it? How do you quantify the benefits of it? I mean, you can ask the teachers, you can ask the students, but again, somebody mentioned it in one of the earlier meetings. If you ask somebody if they'd rather have filet mignon or
Hamburger?
right, I mean, they're going to choose the filet mignon. Will the other thing still fill them up and give them nutrients and energy? I mean, it's just, is there anything that we can point our finger to say, hey, because they have these higher cost, higher quality machines, they're getting better results? I mean, that's something, I don't need an answer right now, but that's something that we always think about. And I was surprised. I came across an article that I sent to the board that I thought Apple had pretty much cornered the market on education. I thought they were taking over the world like Amazon is. But I was surprised to find out that 56% of the education computers are Chrome. And if it's being that effective for other, or maybe it's not being effective, maybe it's just a budgetary thing of why these other districts go with these cheaper devices. But those are all things that we consider and deliberate on. So I don't have an answer. What's that?
Bob did try to sell Chromes a couple of years ago.
Are you talking about effectiveness with student learning or effectiveness as a device?
I mean, both. I mean, if we're going to go out and spend top dollar for these devices, what are we getting for it?
So I think with the iPad, at least at our level, is the fact that those are browser based, and so the Chrome's a browser based product, and iPad works off of apps, and that is much more efficient for kids to actually access and use versus opening a browser, making sure that they're clicking on the certain parts of that website to do what they need to do. It really, Lexi's just one example, but I see it in other places where kids struggle and they lose out on that instructional or that learning time because they're actually trying to get the device to do what they want it to do. And that adds up over the course of a day, a year. So at least at our level, there's that developmental piece too of the icons for non-readers make it much more efficient than trying to ask that kiddo to use a device that's browser based.
I would think after they've done it once or twice, they could do it. I mean, and no, my grandson, who is just an average little kid, when he came home from kindergarten, he could go on, he could pick up anything we had in the house, be it the iPad, the tablet, or go on the computer, and all you had to do was show him once. Some of them you didn't have to show him. And it's kind of like, and he's not like an Einstein, he's just a regular little grunt, you know my grunt. You know what I mean? So I think, I don't think to me, it's repetition, unless you're doing different things every time you go on there. I mean, to log on is to log on. And believe me, I am not the most, he'll tell you, I'm not the most computer literate person in the world because I'm in his office a lot.
At least from the teachers, they are expressing that it is much more quicker and easier, even over time, for students to log in on the iPads than it is on the laptops. The other piece is that even though our network is much more efficient, more effective than it used to be. And a lot of the apps run without being online too, so it creates that opportunity even more to continue to work even though it's not online at that moment.
The other thing is that the children at this level have more experience with iPads than they do with it's not even on.
Oh my goodness.
They have more experience with iPads than they do with laptops even. And so their familiarity immediately, it takes another level away from their getting to work. And the apps are easy. They have apps on phones. They have apps everywhere. Not so much logging on. And as a teacher, trying to connect 20 or trying to fire up 20 computers when they're all different and is a thankless job that I'm thankful that I don't have to do anymore. So.
See, that's because
That's why she retired.
That's why we gave you. See, because you had the crappy computers. All those little hand-me-downs.
And all those little hand-me-down computers, some of them that work, and some of them have the spinning wheel of death.
See, we're getting them prepared for real life. Nobody's affording Mac Airs when they get out of school, and we all have to deal with that.
Thanks so much. Speaking for all the teachers.
Questions? Thank you. Thanks for being here, because I think being in the trenches, that really helps clarify for me the need for the iPads. And before you spoke, I was kind of like, really? But you've made a very compelling reason for me to endorse it. And for all the reasons that you discussed, the grouping and the more efficiency and just the logging on, as you had mentioned, the speed. We don't have a lot of time in school. We've got to be very efficient. And the fact that we could be more efficient with more devices, and then speaking to the proficiency and individualized instruction, which we've been talking about forever. That piece, I respect you, Marge, and your stance, but I'm going in the opposite direction, and I would support that. I do have the MacBook Air. I get the Cadillac scenario, and I know, I read the article that you sent, and I've been reading some other things, and you all got it. I asked Bob, I'm always by the seat of my pants, but today I said to him, can you tell me in the surrounding schools what people use at the high school? And I just found it really interesting that Gorham, SAD6, Yarmouth, Westbrook, all use MacBook. Is that the MacBook Air?
Yeah.
Am I saying that? And Noble, MSAD6, they're getting MacBook Airs. Lewiston, they have the Airs for teaching staff. They do have Chromebooks for students. South Portland has iPads in the high school. I don't understand that. But Scarborough has PCs. And then, if you live in Falmouth and SAD, you just bring your own. So, which is a good gig, I guess, for the school district. I just found it really interesting. It seems compelling to me that so many high schools are using the Airs, and I'm not exactly sure why. Because there is a big cost difference in them. And I don't know, Chris, is this your time to shine?
Bring them on.
I'd say a couple different things. One is the availability of programs that are on the Apple device. For one thing, we've had in the past teacher-supplied machines, and if you remember back to our netbook, MacBook days, we had teachers on one platform and students on another platform, and actually none of them had the same programs,
Right.
so you couldn't always go back and forth. What we found with the machines is that they're super reliable, and that's really what it comes down to, is that it's rare to find some operating issues with them. They work 99% of the time, and
There are things that we found over time that last for a while. I live in one of those districts which parents need to buy machines. We bought two 6-year-old MacBook Pros, replaced the hard drives in them, and they run just as fast as my MacBook Air that I have now. And I've got kids now on their 4th year of them. I just bought a MacBook Air for my incoming high school student that's 3 years old, and it works just as fast as some of the newer machines that are out there. And so some of that longevity piece has been super attractive. And I just know some of the issues with Chromebooks where you have to be on a network. Oftentimes you're limited to just what's available through either the Google apps or the Chrome apps that are there, and not necessarily able to add some of your own programs for things that you might be doing within your school. Also, what we've found in talking to some places, the Chromebooks just don't have the lifespan. And so where you might buy one machine that lasts 8 years, and I think we've had some good luck in our district. I'm surprised some of those white MacBooks now are in year 9. I think we even have maybe 1 or 2 of the first generation ones that are kicking around. And actually I have one of the 80s fishbowl Macs in my office, if anybody wants to come tour it. That was adult ed in the late 80s, early 90s that still runs. But part of it has just been longevity. We've had great success. We're on year 4. I'm on year 4 of my machine, and it's working just as quickly as it was before, with 121,000 emails that I've received on it in the 4 years that I've had that machine. So it's been a great product. I'm not giving mine up.
Thanks. I just want to make one last statement. I want everybody to know, between netbooks and whatever iPads or Mac is, everything we have always bought, we have bought because it was requested of us by, I don't want anybody to think that we went through, the board bought all these things. It was never, we okayed them, but the request always came, well, the whole time I've been here, maybe before that, but it always came from whatever grades we're looking for. It was what they requested. I just didn't want it to the public. I didn't want it to sound like we're willy-nilly and we're not sure, what's wrong with this group. They don't even know what they're buying, because they say you bought this and it didn't work, you bought that. And it's not that. It's a trial and error, and technology progresses, and so don't the needs of everybody.
One of the things that I had forgotten, and you had mentioned it tonight, was the technology audit. And the thing that really, and I had completely forgotten this, but how a consistent platform across K through 12 was the recommendation of our technology audit, which really resonated with me as I was kind of like, well, Chromebook, you want that, made an impression on me. So thank you for mentioning that.
Great. Thank you all for your time. Yes.
Thank you.
Our next guest is Mr. Rich Drummond, and he is our athletics director. I have the staff. I swear. Lean over towards the food here. It is fucking sweat my brains out.
My glasses. Good evening, everyone. Just a few things with the athletic budget that I want to bring to your attention, but we're in the home stretch. Very happy about that. It's been a good 2/3 of the year so far. We've had, I think if you ask some students, they value their experiences in the athletic arena. We have quality coaches who spend countless hours. We have 2 communities that are really behind the offerings for the kids. We have supportive boosters supportive staff members district-wide and at all levels, from the top to the bottom, as far as everybody's very supportive of what our teams do. We have competitive teams. That's not always the most important thing. It's nice. We've had some teams this year play in state championship caliber contests. We've fallen on the short end of the stick, but that's okay, because that's a lifelong lesson as well. But it's really very much a team approach. So it's been a great year. So just a few things that I'd like to draw your attention to with the athletic budget. We're up 1.37%. The bulk of the athletic budget is really through the HR side, through stipends. I do have some control over some account lines that I want to take you through, some increases, very minor, but some things that I want to draw to your attention. The biggest increase, or addition, I should say, is due to unified basketball. And I've lost track. This is either my 18th or 19th year as an athletic director. I guess after 5 or 6, you lose sight of it. But in any event, this is the best thing that I've been involved in. And the last 2 years, it's been a grant through Special Olympics. So this year, it's been incorporated into the athletic budget, where we're going to have funding for the stipends for the coaches, the officials, and the game support. And that was my largest increase, which comes in at about an additional $3,200. And for $3,200, the bang for the buck is pretty remarkable. And I've seen a lot of board members and community members at the events. Lisa, she was behind me, but she's been valuable and instrumental in getting this up and running. So that's one item that I'd like to draw to your attention. I have 3 other items as well that are increases, and they're located on the pink sheets in the athletic component, page 51 of 84. If you look down, you're going to find an account called Purchase Services, 300 Purchase Services, and that's a high school account where it helps fund officials. Officials are really, their contracts are negotiated through the state. So they have a bargaining board that reaches their pay for contests. I know it can be disputed that people in the community, there's bad calls and they think we overpay officials, but I have no say. We have no say as far as what officials. It's a negotiated instrument. So this year there are negotiations to where officials receive increases statewide. So I've bumped that account up $2,300 in anticipation of those fee increases. Another account line that I'd like to draw your attention to is, and again, it's on 51 of 84 on the pinks, but rental and lease 300 at the high school level. I've added $2,500 because our golf teams, JV and varsity, JV participates at Sunset Ridge on River Road, and our varsity golf team is going to be at Riverside North in Portland. And there's some fees associated with that. To have the kids participate at those 2 courses and probably come in at $2,500 or a little under with greens fees today, that's quite remarkable. So there is a bump in rental fees right there. And the last thing that I'd like to draw your attention to is our league fees on, again, page 51 of 84 is up $1,000 at the high school level. Our high school, we're involved, we're a participant in the SMAA, which is the Southern Maine Activities Association. And really the biggest reason why we're part of a league, or really any school's part of a league, is because that's where we obtain our schedules, our opponents. Without that, if we weren't part of a conference, we'd be out kind of on our own and trying to obtain a schedule, and it just wouldn't happen. So with that, every year there's fees associated with the league for us to be a league member school. Some of those fees are going up, so it's my anticipation that $1,000 is going to be appropriate at that level. over the last few years, there hasn't been huge increases. There hasn't been huge decreases. We've really tried to maintain. It's a budget that we're not arriving to events and custom coaches, and we're not, we don't have all the bells and the whistles, but yet again, I think it's something that the kids, the environment, they feel very proud of. It's a budget that keeps the kids safe, it lets the kids compete, and I think it's something that really, whether it be the ice arena, the water, the field, the basketball court, whatever it is, I think it's really a product that's put out there that makes people proud in both communities that's out there. So those are some items that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention in the athletic budget. And I'm not as long as Mr. Hickey, but I apologize, Bob.
It's back on track.
But I can entertain any and all questions, and hopefully I have the answers. If not, I'll definitely get back to you.
This is, you don't have you have a decrease here. This is just a question I have.
Yep.
Because on page 163 of 253, in the budget, it's $231,109.77 for coaches. For, I assume it's athletic stipends. I assume that's coaches. Am I assuming it's a little more than halfway down the page?
A decrease of 5613.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Is that coaches?
That is, yes, and I think that's reflected in the pink as well, Marge. And I'm going to try to give my best Stacy Webster reply and impersonation. It's not going to work, but in any event, I asked her that question back when we were going through, and I believe that reduction is due to last year was a negotiation year. It was anticipation that the stipends were going to be a little bit higher. So in this year, when it was settled, the contract, I believe the rationale that she gave me is that it dropped because it was settled lower, so the stipends are a little bit lower.
Okay.
So,
Could you? I know you don't have it off the top of your head, but just out of curiosity,
yeah.
When you have time,
Yep.
can you just send? Well, anyway, I'd like to know how many coaches we have.
Yep.
You don't have to distinguish, like baseball, so many. Whatever. How many coaches?
I'm still going to send it to you, but I think I'm going to give it to you spot on right now. I think there's 92 coaches district-wide.
92, and that would be a coach, assistant coach.
Total, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, that
Okay,
does not
great.
count volunteers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I will get that to you for sure.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. I'll send it to everybody so they.
Questions? Yeah. Rich, on the pink sheet, page 51, about a quarter of the way down, it looks like differential stipends hyphen unemployment. It looks like you've got $632.69 in the budget. Do we actually pay unemployment to
We pay unemployment insurance for every individual.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that's what that is for all the coaches,
Yes.
for all 92 coaches.
And staff, regular staff as well.
I feel better now. Thank you.
I'm glad Don chimed in because I was going to. That's a little out of my.
Saved by the dawn.
Yeah. Yeah. Next year I'll lean on Mr. Howell.
I just have a comment. It's not budgetary, but we have so many sportsmanship awards, and I just want to congratulate you on your leadership for that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's we've been recognized statewide quite a few times over the last several years, and I can't believe Lisa is back. I forgot Unified is our most recent recipient of the sportsmanship banner, and that's a big deal. It's a big deal. So thank you. And yeah, the gym on the far end, I call it the tennis court side. It's filling up with those banners. So it's pretty neat to see.
How many teams got it this year?
We had two.
Well, I know the swim did.
Yep, swim and unified
swim.
basketball. And over the last, I think over the last 8 years, I think we've received it statewide in different activities 19 different times.
Well,
So,
pretty great.
yeah,
That's cool.
it's
better than winning.
It's a really a good thing, and
It really is.
You know, I'll put it right out there. There's a perception that a lot of times those banners are given to, well, they didn't have a good year, but there's a process in that. You're voted. How it's determined is that schools vote for other schools for that. So there's a process that's used, and we have some very, very competitive teams that have also been competitive on the win-loss side, but they've also received the sportsmanship dinner. So that myth of, well, they didn't make the tournament, but it's not really accurate. So when it comes together, you know, as far as wins and losses and that's great. If it doesn't, and they still get recognized statewide for how they conduct themselves and represent the school, that's awesome. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
All right. And next up we have Chris Howell, the principal of Wyndham High School.
For the last time.
Wow.
Then he's going to sit over there.
Sounds so finely.
You need a tissue?
No, I don't need a tissue. I'm good. I just want to say, though, coming to the mic, and I've obviously had a chance to listen to many different people's budget presentations, but also just want to say publicly thank you to Bill Hansen. We have 5 acres of space at Wyndham High School that gets cleaned every night. So 5 acres with all the different desks and things and all the different pieces of furniture that get wiped down, to be able to do that for Bob for the 1,100 machines and all the different pieces. And, you know, it's funny that right now we're doing some reconfiguring of our network, kind of reworking our guest network and our regular network, but 99% of the time people forget that technology's there and all those machines run. And also to Jeannie for the hundreds of meals that are served every single day. And, you know, we process 1,000 kids through that cafeteria every day with about 600 meals being served. And Rich for the 45 athletic teams that are attached to Wyndham High School. There's a lot of moving pieces. Lisa with the 192 special education kids that are at Wyndham High School. Christine with working and making sure the curriculum does all that it needs to do. And then Dawn and Sandy for answering my countless questions that come up as issues arise. But Wyndham High School is a special place. It's been fantastic to have been there for the last 7 years, and definitely thank you for all of your support through all the different budgets that have happened. But there's been a tremendous amount of support across the district for all the different employees that service Wyndham High School and serve Wyndham High School. Those athletic banners are outstanding representation. Power Serve, you know, kids coming together to serve their community. All the different other things that our kids go out in the community to do and volunteer. Just some amazing things. And even today, Kellyanne Rush telling me that she had put out on a listserv that basically you put out a project there as a teacher, and you know, maybe somebody will fund it. It's like a GoFundMe page for teachers. And some corporation funded every single person that had put something on there, $25 million worth. And so for her history class, they do a project in which, you know, you're looking at their own heritage. They've donated DNA test kits. Those usually run $100 a piece, where kids can take a look at their heritage through that, just by kind of sticking your name up on a list and saying, you know what, maybe somebody will fund it. So just been staff members doing really cool things like that really make Wyndham High School a special, special place. And I really look forward to having the opportunity to work with whoever the new leader is going to be of that place, and you know, handing off you know, a place that I look back on as some of my best years in public education. But we're not here to talk about that tonight. We're here to talk about Wyndham High School and to talk about our budget. And there's not a number of significant increases. And if you're looking at our cover page, a number of the items that you see there as far as numbers that transfer from the left column to the right column are some reclassification of some employees that have changed over the years, and just we haven't quantified them in the correct places. And so, for instance, you see there that we had a business person that's going to a 0, but yet on the bottom we had someone who was a part-time social studies, part-time computer, has now been put over entirely into social studies to make a full position, and we're looking to hire this for the incoming for the fall year, a full-time computer person who will do computer technology instruction, coding, hardware, those different items, to really kind of push at some of the skills and interests that we have for our kids. One of the largest items you see, and I'll talk about that in a minute, is right now we have a full-time librarian and a tech that works in the library. And the library is the center hub of Wyndham High School. There's a lot that goes on there. And so the number of staff members, the number of students, the number of research projects that are going through, we've actually maxed out our librarian. And we're actually reaching a point where we could use additional support. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And so as you look down through, that really is the major change that takes place. In addition, I think it's about 1/10 of a person. And Jordan Small and Wyndham High School share a Spanish teacher. And it was a reclassification. We're actually using her just a tiny bit more than Randy is. It used to be a 50-50 split. I think we're now at a 60-40. And so that now, in your budget, now more accurately reflects. Things that we've been doing at Wyndham High School. I know proficiency-based came up tonight. Yes, we've been working on proficiency-based, and our freshman class is the first class that will be looking to graduate with a proficiency-based diploma. We've been working through the process this year with our freshman class at a minimum, making sure that all of their standards, all the curriculum is matched to standards, that assessments are also matched to those standards. We've been working on grading and reporting. Many of you who are in Portal will notice that we've giving a whole lot more information to parents than we ever did, so now we're reporting out on grades and standards as well. But that's taken up quite a bit of our year. The other thing professionally that's taken up quite a bit of our year is accreditation. And we are up for our decennial, our 10-year accreditation next month. Actually, a month from tomorrow, the team will be coming in. They'll be spending 3 days with us, and they will be looking at all aspects of our school, including some time with all of you as part of their visit. They'll be scheduling an hour with you and to really hear from the board perspective what you think is going on at Wyndham High School, and have an opportunity to weigh in on that report. Over the course of this year, we've had our teachers working on 7 individual standards, everything from instruction to the facility to the curriculum to how we structure assessments, how we work with the community. And the outcome of that is a 120-page report that was submitted to the New England Association of Schools and Colleges back at the beginning of March. We actually got it in early, which was exciting. And the team will come and will read all 7 chapters and will give us some feedback on that, as well as we work to develop a 2-year and a 5-year action plan for things that we want to do at Wyndham High School. It will be a great entry point for the person who comes in to be the leader of Wyndham High School, because they will already have a 2-year and a 5-year plan ready to go that will be vetted by an outside organization. That group will be here for 3 days, and we'll be putting them up at the new Microtel up in kind of the far side by Seacoast, and we'll be feeding them, having them work there, and so we're actually excited to have that here in town. The entire cost for that visit, though, and it's once every 10 years, runs about $30,000, and that includes the cost of the report, having someone professionally edit the report on the NEASC side when the final report is done, paying for the room and board and all the supplies needed for the visiting committee, paying stipends for the individual teachers who've worked very, very hard to develop our accreditation report. And so the final cost, I think we're going to be a little bit under that, what is about $30,000. Next year, that drops to our annual fee of about $3,000 that we pay annually to be a member of New England Association of Schools and Colleges, which is our accredited institution. And that shows schools and colleges that we're going to be sending, like Miss Genevieve over here, that we're a high school that meets some standards, and it's a student definitely worth looking at. But that is one item in the budget looking towards next year. It's been quite a bit of work, but will be a significant reduction because we will no longer be carrying that cost. So talking about significant increases, We have a proposal in the budget to take what we currently have, and we currently have a full-time librarian, and we have a full-time library tech. And the library tech job description is more heavily focused towards cataloging, checking books in and out, making sure that all those different elements that make up running a library are taken care of. Libraries, and I know most of you have had the chance to visit our library and participate in some of the workshops that they've done. Libraries are much, much more than taking in books, checking in books, and making sure that students are quiet. Our librarians are very dynamic. They are out. They are teaching classes. Within our proficiency-based diploma, 5 of the 8 content areas have research standards that students need to meet. And those individuals who run our libraries are actually out working with classroom teachers. They're out teaching classes, and they're making sure that our students have the absolute best research skills that they can. Starting all the way with when students first come into Wyndham High School at the very, very beginning, their freshman year, working in their freshman study halls, going in teaching classes with that. But one individual with 1,000 students and the 80 teachers that they work with is just not enough. They actually can't even schedule in all the demands that are there. And so what we're proposing is actually taking our part-time person that's there. It's not even a full-time person, taking the part-time person, eliminating that position, and bringing in, removing the 35-hour. I'm really sorry, it's not part-time, it's 35. We upped that 2 years ago in the budget. But upping that to a full-time professional position, which then would allow that person to actually go out and teach classes, because it's a big need of ours right now, which is exciting. I mean, our library is alive, it's vibrant, and we have some amazing staff members there that we're very fortunate that they have that component. So looking through the lines, other decreases, there's a $6,000 software decrease. That software decrease is actually gone over to Mr. Hickey's lines. That's Naviance, which is what many of our students are now using to upload all their documents to send to schools and do their applications on. And the second piece that's a little bit of an increase is graduation is up about $2,000. That's not because the cost of the Civic Center or lacrosse arena has gone up any amount. It's because the expenses, everything for expenses, caps, gowns, student diplomas, dinners, banquets, all those different things all get expensed to that line. We receive revenues from the classes where the classes then pay for them, but the expenses have exceeded what we've been budgeting there. And so Stacy, and I can't do a Stacy voice, but if I could, it's really to capture what is actually happening for expenses in that line, even though we have revenues to offset what those increases are. So if you have other questions, I'll just lastly end with the tuition to the 2 CTE centers, which are Portland Arts and Technology and Westbrook Regional Voc, are within your budget here. They reside in the high school. I know that has now since been removed from those lines.
I'm revisiting business. So you go from 1 to 0 for staff on the front sheet. Am I reading this right?
Yeah, let me go back to it. Yes.
I think you just jumped over to me.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
That would help.
I'm just confused about what we're offering for business classes now. Is computer come under that? Because I pulled up the course thing from whatever you call that.
From the course planning guide?
I'm a simple person. Yes. So are we not going to be giving accounting 2, all this jazz? We're not going to be. No, we're not doing that.
We're not going to be doing that any longer.
What about?
And we don't pay volunteers.
So computer science level 1.
Yes, that's the part that we're going to be. It was coded in there under business, on that particular section.
Right.
Really, we're going to be coding in under computer section. Computer and business, where computer was under the umbrella of business. This was in the way that this was set up was that you had a person who was just strictly teaching business.
Okay.
And this is going to be the last year that we have someone teaching accounting.
And there's no need for it, or?
Most of the kids who are taking accounting, I would say 80% of the kids that were taking it for a math credit. And under proficiency based, the level of math that's within it isn't at a level that would actually satisfy what we need to meet the standards. Currently, we're offering students an online version, and a teacher is teaching it virtually. That is still going to be an option for students on the virtual part, but it will not be a full-time staff member or full-time staff member who will be providing that. And part of that is also we had a resignation at the very beginning of the year, which we were never able to fill. And so there's actually a greater demand now for programming and for coding than there is for some of the other traditional business classes that we've offered in the past. And students still have the option at the vocational center for business if that's a direction that they want to go.
Okay.
So it's a repurposing of a position that was already, so there's no increase in the budget.
I'm shuffling through here because I thought I saw somewhere here like a basic computer.
Yep.
So
that would be continued to be offered.
Okay, so that's for the kiddos. My impression was that was supposed to be handled in those schools as far as proficiency. Computer.
Correct.
Okay, so this is for those kiddos who need.
Students who have an interest in computer science.
Okay.
So those are the kids that are getting into some basic programming.
Yep.
That are looking to go beyond just, I'm able to do the basic things on my computer.
Okay, good. I'm all set. Thank you.
Did you ever get an answer from your email? I don't want to ask a question if it's home sitting on my computer. Did you ever get an answer to your question about whether the part-time library goes away and we hire a full-time?
He answered that.
It goes away.
But is that the same person? I guess what I was wondering is that person going to lose? Is that a job? I know the job title's going away, but is that person qualified to fill the other?
So with any position that opens in this district, it's a new position. It's open to anybody.
Okay.
There'll be a position that will be eliminated. But through our fair labor practices, we will open it up, but it will involve the reduction of a position.
On the front sheet again.
Yeah.
Showing an increase in phys ed and health. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear you talk about an increase in phys ed and health. Or is that just a reclassification
or a typo?
It's actually going to be a typo from the previous year.
So do we have 4 or 5?
We have 5 people that are in that department. We had 5 people this year, and we have 5 people next year.
People last year. Was it increased? Oh yes.
No.
All right, just a typo then.
Okay.
You know what? I bet it's from. It's exactly what it was from. Is that we had a retirement in family and consumer science, and instead of hiring a family and consumer science person, we actually hired another health person because the family consumer science person was actually teaching health. And so that's why it was reclassified.
So you have 5 or 4?
We have 5.
Okay.
And if you notice on the left-hand side, family consumer science goes away.
Yep. Other questions?
Great question.
Chris, on page 80 on the pink sheets, very top line, regular secondary program, you got professional salary teacher with an increase of 119. But then I keep referring back to this cover sheet here, and it doesn't look like you have too many increases. So do you still have a vacant position that you're looking to fill?
I think that increase of 119 is the negotiated salaries. That's
It
a
is.
reflection of the new contract
Okay.
across 84 staff members.
84. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Okay. And next we have Drew Patton, who is the principal of the Wyndham Middle School.
You were going to get the snippet
Go ahead.
Can we take a break to turn up the heat a little bit?
Yeah.
Do you know what happens to the last person? We're not.
I can slip a bunch of things in.
The lights come on. The lights.
Good evening. It's good to see all of you. So just to frame us before we get into numbers, what Wyndham Middle School has been up to, I've talked about this for a couple of years. We continue to work on our Ignite block, our reading intervention and math intervention. So we're in our second year of that. So we service a lot of kids in terms of kids that are below grade level in reading that do not receive special education services in both reading and math. This is our second year of reading. A lot of really great numbers to share. Kids that are after a short period of time, a semester, a year, are making the gains that they need to be able to be on grade level and be able to go over to the high school, which is what the intent is, to be on grade level so that they can be more successful. This is our first year of implementing math, which occurs at the same time. So again, we've trained a lot of teachers. Melissa Bois oversees the entire program. So a lot of really great results from that. And I really feel like it's the first time for Wyndham Middle School in a long time that we have a really dedicated intervention services for our kids and to be able to get them on grade level so that when they reach the high school, they're in a better position to be successful. So we'll continue with that. Reading across the board at Wyndham Middle School has increased, I think, exponentially with the ability for kids who aren't receiving those services to get 45 additional minutes of reading daily and some instruction that goes along with that. Next year, we'll look at some other options while still keeping kids reading, making sure that they have some more choices. So we may look at some more sustained silent reading or independent reading models. Right now, teachers select book choices and kids try to match up their interests with that. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. So we'll look at some other models so that we can keep kids reading, but also keep them talking about books, keep them interested in books. One of the differences in terms of gaining and reading level is time spent reading. So the more time that we can do that with kids, the more time that we can engage them with that, the better. We've had a lot of parents share with us recently about their experiences with kids, their kids being non-readers who are now coming home, talking about books, giving a whole summary of everything that they've been reading, and parents have reached out and really explained and talked to us about how much that's mattered for them, that they have a reader who wasn't a reader before. So getting those things, that information back to us is really helpful in knowing that it's working for all the kids. Another focus for us that we really dove into this year is project-based learning. We have a free partnership with King Middle School through a teacher that I used to work with. They had a grant, so they have been working with us. So one of the instructional leaders from King Middle has come to the school, provided professional development. His teachers have come as well. So what I'm asking for is a commitment from all of you. You should see something in the paper soon about our work this year. We'll be starting our project-based learning this spring. Some teams have already started. And the end result that I'd like everybody to at least come to one of the events is what's called a culminating event. And that event is a public event where kids are on display. Well, they're not on display. Their work is on display. And they show their learning. And it's an opportunity for their parents to see the work, but more importantly, to also have important people in the public, superintendent, assistant superintendent, high school principal, school board members to be able to come and see their work. So the goal with that is to make sure that every student on that night has one conversation with one person that's important to them or an important person. So if you're coming from a school board perspective and you're saying, I'm a school board member, I want to talk about your work, I want to see your work, that would really make a big difference to us and a big difference to the kids. So very soon we'll do an article in the Wyndham Eagle. Probably I'll be meeting with Wyndham Eagle next week, and then we'll put out a press release that'll come out on listserv as well. And a lot of that is really attaches to Design for Learning in terms of the strategic plan. Really talks about community involvement, relevance,
kids being involved in real world problems, but having to come up with their own solutions to those. And so it's our first stab at it as a staff. The staff has been working really hard. They're very stressed out, and they'll continue to be stressed out in a good way. And I think for kids, it brings a level of accountability for them. It brings an accountability of realism and ideally more engagement in school, which is one of the reasons why we do that. So that was a lot very quickly. So some other things for us that we need to, that we're going to continue to work on is really supports and extensions for kids with our intervention. I feel like that's been helpful with supports, but I do believe that we need to continue to do work across the board with making sure in all regular education classes that we have supports for all learners, but we also have extensions for all learners. So that kind of ties in the work that I've been doing with Chris and continued work with the new high school principal in terms of making sure that the middle schools are aligned with what high school expectations are. So that includes really looking at grading practices, looking at how they have, in the right way, because of proficiency-based diploma, they really set what the bar is and what those expectations are. And I want to make sure that the middle school is really aligned with that. And as long as the grading practices and the expectations for kids at our level are age appropriate, then I believe that we should begin to adopt those, just so it's not a new world for kids when they hit their freshman year, which is one of the most challenging years for all kids. So that's something that I'll continue to work on as Chris leaves and as the new principal comes on board. That's what I have to start. All right, you ready for some numbers? This one's easy.
That's what they all say.
So as you know, Kyle lost the bubble, and now Danielle has the bubble in terms of 4th and 5th grade. So for the next 2 years, things are going to get a little bit crowded at Wyndham Middle School. So we go from a total of 602 kids this year to 628 next year, and then that will increase even more. There's a class of about 235, 238, give or take. You could probably look at the sheets that are sitting in 4th grade right now at Manchester School. So in terms to stay within the teacher ratio, we have to add a 6th grade teacher next year. And as you all know, space is limited. So to be able to do that, the best option that is the least impactful on kids in a negative way is to add space to Field Allen to be able to accommodate that group. And then as that bubble moves through, we have to kind of rotate teachers around within the middle school as they start to enter the main building. That's all I'm asking for. Everything else stays the same. Applied arts is all the same. I continue to make adjustments based off of what I predict that we spend and what we actually end up spending in the school year. Last year I did take a little bit of a hit in terms of giving up some after school stipends. I tried to be as creative as possible, but we need to add some of that back. Our kids are looking for more opportunities after school, and unless I have volunteers, I don't have any way to compensate staff for that. So I reduced some budget lines there. So my budget's essentially flat from material supplies, but I've increased in after school back to where we were in the past so that we can offer some more opportunities for kids.
The library will probably pitch in a little bit. It takes some stress off of that anyway.
That would be nice.
So when you say expand Field Allen, you're talking about.
Yeah, so I think Bill talked about that. I missed that. I was not napping. I was at conferences at the middle school. Part of the plan now is in terms of looking at, instead of it being portables, can that be attached to Field Allen in terms of portables? And what that does is allows us not to have a separate entrance to the portables with buzz-in. Basically, all of the features of Field Allen could be incorporated into the portables. So I think he's been really working with the fire marshal on that, making sure that the design will work, making sure that all the functions would be there. And a benefit from that, if it does work, is that we would be able to reroute students when they walk through to Field Allen. Now they have to go all the way around the front, whereas in this model, if it worked, we'd be able to have kids enter the school from the portables, which would reduce the amount of distance that they'd have to walk because it's a ramp. Right now we have stairs that enter Field Allen, which in terms of egress, in terms of slips, trips, and falls is not ideal. And that would leave them on the same fire alarm system, the same security type of systems, and then we would not need the need for water or bathrooms in those classrooms. Whereas if they're standalone, that would have to happen.
I just have a question. Did you say portables?
2 classrooms. Basically, we need to fit 50 kids. So if it were a standalone, it would look like 1 unit.
Okay.
Bathrooms in the middle, classrooms on each side.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So what will that decrease the walk from the middle school? It'll be affordable now and not.
Someone, please do not measure this after I say.
Kind of like it's a little more. It's got to be more than half, right?
I don't know about half. I would say 150 feet, or it's fairly significant. Whenever I enter Field Allen, I just use a key and I go in the closest door because otherwise it's a walk around. It's much quicker. I can see the whole building that way. So it does save time not having to go around the front. And for your kids, when it's weather like it was today, it's nice. It's nice to be able to get out, but we don't have weather like that all the time. And we have kids that there's nothing that I can do when it's a downpour. When it's a downpour, we send kids because we can't wait it out. We might be there forever. A lot of kids don't have jackets. Not all of them have umbrellas. They're carrying laptops, bags, lunches. It's not ideal. Whenever we have a snowstorm and there's snow that's to be tracked in, it's a hazard there unless we have it cleaned up right away. Because you have 200 kids cycling in regularly. In addition to that, there are doors that we have to check constantly to make sure that the place is secure.
Cool.
You said cool.
Cool. Well, I saw the print. Actually, I saw the print because
Yes.
him and Mike were, when I was in his office, him and Mike were fiddling, like playing paper dolls, you know, it was kind of like constructing. And it was pretty cool.
Is it between the, so it's between the middle school and Field Allen?
Correct.
Behind that green?
Yeah, if you think of where the steps are to, if you're looking at the front of Field Allen to the right, that it would be, the steps would integrate into the portable.
Okay.
And so that would all be enclosed. So if I'm walking out the end of Field Allen, I walk through those doors, but it's still enclosed. It's a ramp at that level. Yeah.
Because if I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, it was basically so the feeling would be you were in the same building. Right. Because you came through where the steps are now, the ramp that comes down, and it's a hall that goes all the way to the door at the end, and the 2 classrooms go off the side, so it's kind of like an addition of where they're coming off of the main hallway now.
That's correct.
Right.
So what do you do when they go to 7th and 8th? How do you juggle that?
Move the 7th grade back.
Next year's presentation.
Yeah. Switch them around.
Basically, you just have to juggle some teachers around. So when the load is on Field Allen, essentially next year we need to get one more teacher in Field Allen, but I don't have the space for that. But also I need that in terms of teams. I'm not going to put somebody out there on their own. This setup will get us through all 3 years. Eventually, what I'll need to do as the bubble moves to the main building is I'll have to move applied art staff or some other staff out to Field Allen. So basically, I just shift the spaces as we go. This plan gives us the most flexibility with numbers. As you can see, we're fairly tight around that 200 level. Next year, 7th grade being 191. That's where a few kids coming in can kind of make that difference to where we need another classroom. We don't have a lot of spaces that are available right now.
Any questions? Okay.
Great, thank you.
Next room. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm gonna make a sense. So here's where I wanted to put in the adjustment to the agenda, just to have I just wanted to open it up again for any public comment. No? Okay. Moving on. Just want to know if I could get maybe a quick sense of where everybody's at So as you've seen in our budget timeline, we had one scheduled meeting for deliberations and vote. So we can certainly add another one. But I need to know where everybody's at with that. Are we thinking that the present number is on target? Still too high?
Too high. I think it's too high.
Just an overall sense of where we're at so that we can plan.
Are you thinking that we won't, pardon me, are you thinking that we won't have enough time in that one meeting to negotiate?
Some people have gotten in touch with me saying that they did not just want one session to deliberate and vote in the same night.
Yeah.
So
yes, I agree.
We had moved next week's meeting to the 11th because Dawn wasn't going to be here. Doesn't mean we still can't have next week's meeting, but we'll have to, we might not have answers to questions, which is fine. We'll just keep track. So that was the reason some people wanted more time. So we want to make sure you have enough time to digest, ask questions, and get answers. So, anybody wants to?
I'll speak up. I mean, I think there's opportunity to reduce a few areas, and if that's the wish of the majority of the board, then the A-team's going to need to decide what's priorities for them, and we don't get to dictate what gets cut, but we can give an indication that we feel the number needs to come down, and then they're going to need time to meet and do that. So, I mean, I definitely think we need at least one more meeting. I mean, I personally can't deliberate and vote in the same night, and I think realistically, I don't know that we might need more than one additional one. But
or if it's the will of the board to reduce the 3.61, the A-team is going to need time too to go back. So that's not, our meeting's on a Wednesday. It's a quick turnaround.
And then, Don, can you remind us what the lead time is that we need for public notice before the public budget meeting?
Oh,
do you know that?
I think I have that with me, but
because it seems like each year we run into a situation and we have to have a meeting on a Tuesday, because if we wait till Wednesday, then
it's too late. We're a day over.
Right.
I remember that.
I'm not sure I brought that tonight, and I don't dare to say until I.
Well, we definitely have to look at that so we know. Because
I have the column. I just don't have it.
So we had added the 11th so that Dawn would be present. So then our next meeting after that would be the 25th. But now we're starting to get...
Do the 4th, 11th, and 25th.
Right. So if we meet next week, that's the one we were kind of waffling on.
I think that 25th is around the time, if memory serves me, that we're getting against
the wall.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we have to make it a Tuesday or whatever, we have to make it a Tuesday. We've done it before. But
like I said, we could meet next week.
I think I have that, actually.
Oh, do you?
And I'm reading because I haven't digested it myself. So, let me see. Board meeting to call budget meeting and sign warrants, call validation referendum and sign the warrants. Recommended 14 days before the budget meeting. Must leave time for other deadlines below. So you post the budget at least 7 days before the budget meeting. That's scheduled to be May 23rd.
Sandy, the calendar's on the wall right behind you if you need one. I can't see it really from here.
So it sounds like the 25th might be good.
We'll get this to you tomorrow. Yeah. We'll work it out. Yeah. Actually, I could get to you.
So stick with the 11.
So question to a couple of people, maybe you and you. But so is there a certain percentage, a magical percentage that works, or are we looking at?
I don't think you're wrong.
Why is he waving? Oh, yeah. Okay, he's got it on now.
Is there a certain percentage that you're looking to accomplish? Because you mentioned there was room for change, but we don't make that change. So you may not necessarily get that, if you're looking at a certain piece of the pie, you may not get that. So is there a certain percentage that kind of works?
I don't have a certain percentage. It just seems
But what
too high to me.
But I don't want to see it. What happened last year? We just said go back and change, and then they got to come back.
And we said it wasn't
too
enough.
high, and that's a lot of work. We got to set something.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I'd like to see it under 3%. Usually, people say, well, I was out and I bumped into a night. It usually doesn't happen to me. I bump into people and we just talk and, hi, how are you? And how's your retirement or whatever. But I have recently bumped into quite a few people, and the conversation always goes around just before we depart. Please, when you do the budget, don't raise my taxes again. And these are people that never say it to me before. I think we're going to have a tough year with the public this year because I told, well, I don't know, I think I told all of you what happened with Social Security. Social Security, they gave you a raise, but your insurance went up. So it was a deficit. That's a deficit, so we can count on that for people who are retired or on Social Security. The other thing is we have the referendum passed for a new public works facility down there, and people are going to have that on their mind. And if we do not get within the numbers for a new middle school, we're going to be looking at going to referendum. And this, if you look at, I know we usually go back and do the history thing of, all around this, we've only gone up this much %. But if you go through the numbers, it's taken a double jump this year. And I don't have the long chart in front of me at the moment. But if you went through, 2016, 17, if you went through all of them, it went up like 1 million something, whatever. But then it went from, was it 40? I don't have it in front of me, Dawn. But it went to 47. I think now we're down to 46. But, here it is. It went from 44. It was 47, but we're to 46, but it's a double jump. And usually it's been increments of it. Before it was 44, the year before it was 43, then it was 42. So the appearance and
That's
huh?
That's not accurate. I understand what you're saying, but the increases. I don't mean to.
No, that's okay.
Just to get the information out there, it was 1.76 million initially for the current.
Yeah.
Is that what you're?
Well, no. When we had, I don't know where my sheet is. The sheet that went across that said 2016, 17,
From the
whatever.
budget presentation. Are you looking at the budget presentation?
And yeah.
Well, in any event, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to.
So, but anyway,
So what's your number? 299?
No, I know what you're saying, though.
You know what I'm saying?
If you look year over year, it seems like this did have, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, this did take the most significant increase.
And I understand there was rationale behind it because there is money that did not come down, and I get that. But we get that because we deal with this all the time, but the public does not deal with it all the time. So they're not going to look at it through the same eyes that we would look at it. That's the only reason I'm saying, if we can possibly get it down. That's what I would like to see. That's my last statement.
Okay, so what's where do we want to shoot for? 0.62% less?
I would like to see it under 3%, I already said.
Okay, so that's 299 is. I'm just trying to get some direction with what I'd like to see.
That would be a $281,000 reduction from what you've received as a request.
281 would put it under 3.
Correct.
And we won't know. Remember that thing I forwarded on, and I asked you the question from that new bill, the new thing they're trying to get through on putting.
That's a revenue side. So what Marge is referring to is system administration money had been taken out of the revenue stream from the state, and they are considering putting that back. So that's good news, but that's the revenue side. It's not the expense side. So it wouldn't help with this deliberation. It will help with your taxation piece.
On this version 5 version 5 changes, the health insurance going from 15 to 12, is that because that's not because we found out what it's actually going to be, is it? We're just
No, we haven't. That's correct. We were feeling that the 10-year average was 7.5. A worry that it had been a 16 a couple of times and a 20 once, but we're taking a bit of a gamble. But that would be an area that, at 146,000 for every 2 points, that's a lot of dough. I guess if you kept your reserve fund at the $280,000 level and you wanted to kind of roll the dice on that one, then, maybe they were back to you saying, it came in at a higher level and there goes the reserve. I mean, so there's some ways to think about it, I guess.
So if you take a snapshot of just like the last 3 years of insurance, hasn't it been around 9?
Give me a moment. Take a look.
You can be a little quicker.
Does anybody else have an opinion to share?
I just have to say, last year was a real rough year, and we did ask everybody to make additional cuts, and they came back and they did that. And this year, they've just essentially said, "Can we just stay where we are? Can we just stay where we are?" We haven't had anyone come in and say, "I need, all these bells and whistles, and let's add all this." And looking at it, I feel comfortable with this budget, and I would feel real uncomfortable with asking for more cuts to anything. So I obviously will be at whatever meetings we have to have, but that's just my 2 cents. I think our teachers and our administration saying, "Can we please just stay where we are?"
So actually that number was less. It was 7.14 last year. It was a 0 increase in 16-17 and 2.1 in 15-16.
So we possibly could make up that difference from 12 to 8, let's just say.
Yeah.
Does that put us under?
That's a lot of money. Yeah.
Well, how is it a 15 to 12 is only $148,000 reduction?
Well, again, the calculation is based on the premium. So we have staff that have evolved in different ways over the year in terms of their family situation. We simply change the rate and apply it to the specific situation of the human beings. So it's an exact figure. So it could be that some people have gone to a spousal plan. It could be that they no longer have a family and it's a 2-person. So all those gyrations occur to the staff that are currently on staff.
I guess I'm just asking, like, in the adjustment to the version 5, the changes, our health insurance assumption is 15% to 12%.
Right.
That 3% drop equated to $148,600. So if it drops another 3%, wouldn't that be a reduction of $148,600?
Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, because you made it sound like a 2-point drop, or I don't know. So for every 1%, then you're basically looking at a third of 148, which is close to 50,000.
Right.
So it would take a 5-point drop to be 250,000. So I think we're gonna have to look elsewhere.
Which if we stand on average, we're at almost a 5-point drop.
But we don't find that out till when?
Well, I won't say always after the budget hearing. I think last year we actually did find out in advance of the May meeting. So, the best I can do is just check with others and see what their crystal ball looks like, because that's essentially what it is. And it is specific to, they've changed the way that they rate folks, which I know you're aware of, which is they put folks, meaning districts, in bands depending on what the actual expenses were. And we were in a pretty decent band, but the other thing is they will calculate that based on what the illnesses and whatnot have been over the past year. So that makes it a bit more of a wild card. So I'm not suggesting you can't consider it. I'm just not. I'm trying to hedge.
This was your last year. You should have been on radio.
Yeah, no. There you go. I'm just thinking, if that's a decision you make, but that we're clear that that it may not be as we hope, then, people are going to have to go to the reserve fund. I mean, that's what's available.
Yes. I don't want to pigeonhole, on the insurance. I guess the thing from us would be, are we comfortable with 3.61? Like you said, we should, we can't tell them with it. Do we want them to go back and look at it? And if so, what are we kind of looking at for a percent or some number without telling them go here, go there, or...
Well, in fairness, I think we're getting into deliberations, which we probably shouldn't be since it wasn't on the agenda. I think we were just trying to figure out how many meetings we're going to need, and I think we're going to need at least a couple.
So do you want to meet next week?
I can't meet the 11th. I'll be out of state.
Oh, that's right.
As I said.
You weren't going to be here. I forgot.
And he's not sorry.
I know he's not.
I remember that. I'm going to be in Florida.
So either the 4th or the 18th is fine by me.
So did we determine officially that we could do the 11th or the 25th without jeopardizing the timetable?
We can do 11.
Well, you know what? You don't have to answer right now.
Right.
How about that?
That's good, because I don't want
Yeah, but let's meet the 11th.
The 11th and the 25th. And then
If it's not, then we'll
I'd like to be here for the
Yeah, I would
vote,
like
so
to.
I wouldn't want the vote to be on the
From the
Right.
next time, because you won't have another set for you.
So we think that's the case. If it's not, then you'll be calling a meeting on the 4th.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So we'll let you
or
know.
some other odd day.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Well, we do have.
Yeah, but he's not here the 12th either, so.
We have the vacation week,
right.
which
They
is
don't want me
why the vacation week is why it's put off into the 25th.
I get it.
So
And
that's why.
Consideration, if we do a day that's other than a Wednesday, I think it's important that it's televised and that we have the ability to be on air, so that would be another consideration as far as timing.
So it can't be a Monday or a Tuesday.
So we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Okay.
Planning board's Monday.
I move. We adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor? We are adjourned.